Chapter 337. There were actually a lot of ways to get through the samsara spirit tribulation. For example, the coconut old man had mentioned before, sending one's soul into the gate of samsara to be interrogated by the thunder tribulation. This was a common method. Of course, the risk was actually minimal. While the thunder tribulation was painful, in the end, it was better than taking the side road. If the coconut old man had opened up a space in the heavenly fissure and waited for his believers to come, then set up statues all over the world, after leaving the space, Wang Ling withdrew his heavenly eye and tossed the ancient jade back to Fatty Luo. Fatty Luo stared at Wang Ling hopefully and asked, "Ling Zhenren, is this real?" Wang Ling nodded his head. Fatty Luo had indeed picked up a treasure, but because of time constraints, Wang Ling hadn't examined it carefully just now, and hadn't been able to find out what on earth the nomological power contained in the heavenly fissure stone was. But Wang Ling's answer alone was enough to make Fatty Luo smile like an overlord flower. "I never thought that I would find such a treasure just by casually looking around." Of course, Fatty Luo was happy, but Wang Ling wasn't happy at all. He had initially just wanted to help Fatty Luo verify the heavenly fissure stone's authenticity, and had never expected that there would actually be a sealed true immortal space hidden inside. Although that coconut old man didn't look like a bad person, Wang Ling had never thought that he would have anything to do with such a person. For Wang Ling, this was actually the beginning of an ill-fated relationship. A heavenly fissure stone had infinite spirit power. If you had a way to activate it, it was equivalent to having the power of a true immortal. Furthermore, the heavenly fissure stone itself could help raise one's realm, and was a priceless treasure that was hard to come by. And usually priceless treasures brought about the calamity of death. Wang Ling lowered his eyelids and gave Fatty Luo a final warning with his eyes, which could be considered a kind reminder. Fatty Luo immediately got the message. He put the heavenly fissure stone away and smiled fiercely. "Don't worry, Ling Zhenren. I don't have any use for this ancient jade at this stage. At most it's a collector's item." Wang Ling nodded and directly turned around. Fatty Luo saw Wang Ling's figure turn transparent, and then directly disappear in front of him. Fatty Luo secretly marveled at this scene. This had to be the legendary teleportation spell, right? Fatty Luo was extremely envious. Ling Zhenren's realm was really too high. Even if Fatty Luo chased him barefoot, it would take him several thousand years to catch up. When he got home, he lay on his bed and thought about that coconut old man. He didn't expect that there was actually someone in this world who was painstakingly pursuing the immortal venerable realm. For most people, this was a rather illusory realm. There were even fewer descriptions of people who had reached this realm in ancient books. The only famous person recorded in historical records was the legendary immortal Zhen Yuan, who was rumored to be a venerated immortal. However, this rumor actually had no basis, and there was no way to verify it. Wang Ling clenched his fists. The Tao Talisman seal on his arm was to help him better control his aura and suppress his spirit energy in order to maintain a normal standard of living. But when he needed to burst out with power, he could still display astonishing strength. Take the last time he had closed the gate between worlds with one arm. He remembered that he hadn't taken off the Tao Talisman, but he had already unleashed the power of a true immortal. If he took off the Tao Talisman seal, even Wang Ling himself didn't know what would happen. After lying in bed for a while, Wang Ling suddenly felt like his eyelids were fighting to stay open, and he actually felt a little sleepy. This was strange to Wang Ling ever since he was a child. He had a problem with not liking to sleep. He could count the few times he had felt sleepy on his fingers. Had he used up too much energy using the heavenly eye just now? Wang Ling didn't know that using the heavenly eye to observe the heavenly fissure had actually consumed so much of his eye power. But on second thought, Wang Ling felt that using the heavenly eye to observe the heavenly fissure shouldn't have been enough to make him feel sleepy. Using the heavenly eye to leave the old man's space should have consumed most of his eye power. When he had been in the space on the island, Wang Ling still remembered that coconut old man's solemn vow that there was no way he could leave the space. Unfortunately, it wasn't up to the coconut old man to decide whether Wang Ling wanted to leave or stay. After taking the old man's kitchen knife to Fatty Luo for maintenance, Wang Ling had originally planned to come back and review his homework a little. But now that he was feeling so sleepy that he stuck to the bed like glue, he didn't want to move at all. Staring at the desk a few meters away from him, he stretched out his hand, then slowly put it down. Wang Ling felt that this was probably the legendary lazy cancer. Forget it. I'll just sleep a little and review later. Looking at the desk in front of him, Wang Ling had already completely given up on resisting. Before he closed his eyes, he sent a text message to Wang Ming on his wristwatch. He had already retrieved the heavenly materials, sword from Fatty Luo's place. Wang Ling felt that it would be more reliable for Wang Ming to pick it up himself. He wouldn't feel at ease leaving it to any courier service. Even if it was worth it, if the courier company really did lose it, given the quality of the heavenly materials sword, even selling the entire courier company wouldn't be able to pay for it. After composing the text message and clicking send, Wang Ling lay on his side on the bed and slowly closed his aching eyes. Dreams were also a rare thing for Wang Ling. Under normal circumstances, he didn't dream when he slept, although he would occasionally have a few foreboding dreams. After about 4 or 5 minutes, Wang Ling confirmed that he had entered a dream. The dream in front of him was actually a vast ocean, and he was actually standing on an island. Wait. The scenery in this dream seemed a little familiar. The corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched, and he decisively turned around to look behind him, just in time to see the coconut old man staring at him with a sinister smile on his face. Hee hee. Little brother, I told you long ago, you can't escape. Wang Ling. The coconut old man's face was full of pride. I've already set up a soul contract in this space. The first person to enter the space will automatically sign the contract. From now on, when you dream, you'll dream of me. Aren't you surprised? Aren't you excited? Aren't you surprised? In the next moment, Wang Ling suddenly woke up with a start. Was it because he hadn't slept for too long that he was sleeping the wrong way? Wang Ling looked at the time. It was such a short dream, but he realized that he had actually slept for a full 20 minutes just now. What kind of feeling was this? Chapter 338. Wang Ling felt that he must have had a nightmare because he hadn't slept for too long. He closed his eyes and looked inside his body, and even checked his soul inside out, but didn't find the soul contract that the coconut old man in the dream had mentioned. So was he thinking too much? Wang Ling breathed a sigh of relief. Actually, if it was really like what the coconut old man in the dream had said, that as soon as he entered the space, he would automatically form a soul contract. Wang Ling felt that he should have been able to completely sense it. His life now was a little turbulent from time to time, but overall, it was still within Wang Ling's acceptable range. At this stage, it was still a little too early for Wang Ling to come into contact with a venerated immortal. He didn't want to be pestered by some random person, and even more so didn't want to get involved with some so-called old seniors in the cultivation circle for no reason. That would only bring more trouble to himself. Frowning, Wang Ling raised his hand and opened all the windows in the room. What was supposed to be a beautiful weekend had in the end been completely ruined by that coconut old man, which inexplicably made Wang Ling feel a little upset. A cool breeze caressed Wang Ling's cheeks through the window, calming his restless heart a little. After reviewing his homework for a while, Wang Ling closed his book and saw the old man and Mother Wang ride sheep out through the window. Mother Wang was sitting behind the tricycle with Loopy Toad in her arms, while the old man pedaled the tricycle. It looked like they were going to buy groceries and take Loopy Toad out for a stroll. Wang Ling cupped his chin in his hands as he sat at his desk and watched the old man ride the tricycle away along East Huang Road. When they were less than 10 meters away from the Wang family's small villa, Wang Ling saw Loopy Toad actually stretch out its dog melon seeds to pull at the corners of its eyes and make a face at him. Wang Ling's face immediately twitched at this scene. He truly felt that Loopy Toad's life was much more comfortable than his. Bored to death on a rare weekend, Wang Ling opened Father Wang's novel on his wristwatch and was surprised to find that Father Wang hadn't updated any chapters today. He scrolled down the webpage, and sure enough, he saw that the novel comments section for the live streaming Life of the Immortal King was full of complaints. Book friend Little White is too much. Is Great Wang Sit is still not updating today? Tell me if you don't update. Waiting for an update is the most painful thing. Friend Stop the War Dream. Shocking. A certain web novelist actually hadn't updated his novel until now. Was it because of the distortion of human nature, or the loss of morality behind this? Book friend July Flowing Gold. I used to follow a book by an author called 3 Days and 2 Sleeps, and as I did so, I discovered that this author had established 3 days and 2 updates. Wang Situ, you have to hold on. Reader, I want to shut the author's little black room to write. Everyone, please watch your manners. Scolding people is wrong behavior. In my opinion, why don't we find 2 people to wait at the door of the author's house? Then when the author comes out, we can use a gunny sack to cover the author and drag him out. Book friend Jeekspada. Could it be that I'll be updating once a day in the future? Oh, no. Wang Ling. As far as Wang Ling could remember, it wasn't like Father Wang had never dragged on with his updates. Furthermore, based on Wang Ling's summarization of Father Wang's novel updates over the years, if Father Wang updated his novels at a normal pace, he wouldn't usually drag on or stop updating. But if Father Wang's inspiration burst forth one day, and he finished writing a week's worth of manuscripts in one day, then what awaited him might be a subsequent exhaustion of inspiration. When all was said and done, Father Wang was just an ordinary person, and inspiration wasn't something that came to him on a whim. After a one-time burst of inspiration, Father Wang was bound to feel like his brain had been hollowed out. There were times when writing really couldn't be rushed. Sometimes, the more you wanted to write, the more you might find that your mind was blank when you really started writing. For a veteran web novelist like Father Wang, there were times when he delayed or stopped updating his novels because of time. For example, he had to coordinate with the website to promote his novels offline. Of course, there was also the plot. Father Wang had been a writer for many years, and Wang Ling didn't believe that his old man really couldn't write a single word. But in this state of mind, if Father Wang forced himself to write something, he wouldn't be able to explain the quality of his chapters to his readers. Updating or quality, this was a problem that many authors faced. After all, you couldn't have your cake and eat it too. So when Wang Ling went downstairs, he saw Father Wang leaning against the sofa with a lifeless expression on his face, his hands pillowed under his head, and a cigarette in his mouth. Father Wang's usual way of finding inspiration was to watch live streams of female live streamers. But his favorite female live streamer, Little Xian, wasn't online at this time, which made Father Wang feel a little frustrated. Seeing Wang Ling come downstairs, Father Wang turned his head slightly to look at him, then patted the sofa. Ling Ling, come and sit. Wang Ling knew that this was Father Wang's second main way of finding inspiration, and that was to crazily look for someone to chat with. Usually, it was Mother Wang who played this role. But now that Mother Wang had gone out with the old man to buy groceries, Wang Ling was once again surprised to find that he had unexpectedly become the spare tire. Little Ming will come over tonight. Your mom and grandpa have gone out to buy groceries, Father Wang said to Wang Ling as he shook off the cigarette ash. Wang Ling gave a very cooperative sound. Father Wang, who had intermittently lost his inspiration, had a different look in his eyes. They were full of gloom, which made Wang Ling feel a little nauseous. Father Wang squinted at Wang Ling and realized that there were actually 2 body lengths between them. The corners of his mouth couldn't help twitching. Child, why are you so far away from me? Wang Ling. Then he directly reached out and pulled Wang Ling over to his side. Have you forgotten how you stuck to me when you were little? Wang Ling took a deep breath and chose not to argue. The thing that had left the deepest impression on him when he was little had to be Father Wang's stubble, which was really prickly. The sudden mention of his childhood reminded Father Wang of a lot of stories, and he couldn't help laughing. Do you know? Actually, your mom used to write novels. Wang Ling gave him a curious look. Huh? Father Wang. Your mom and I have been childhood friends since we were kids, and I know exactly what her hobbies are. Also, when she was young, she even published books, and they were very good. At that time, a lot of publishing houses contacted her to write a sequel. Your mom had even drafted the outline. and was planning to start her career under a new pen name. But she just happened to be pregnant with you. Chapter 339. Later, in order to take care of you, your mother discussed it with me and stopped writing. She was determined to become a full-time wife. Father Wang leaned against the sofa with a cigarette between his lips, but his eyes were no longer dejected, and were instead filled with happiness as he reminisced about the good old days. When Wang Ling thought about it carefully, it seemed that this was the first time he had heard his father talk about the past. Wang Ling also hadn't expected Mother Wang to have actually written novels before he was born, and it seemed that they were pretty good ones. What about the name of the novel? Wang Ling couldn't help asking telepathically, very curious. Father Wang cupped his chin in his hand as he thought for a bit. At the time, your mom had a pen name called One Man One Piece, and she wrote a romance cultivation light novel called Half Immortal Summer Princess, which was published back then. Wang Ling. After it was published, the publisher found that the book sold surprisingly well, but a lot of readers sent letters complaining about the pen name. So after that, your mother decided to change to a new pen name before she started writing the next book. But at that time, your mother had already written the outline, but she wouldn't tell me her pen name. I heard that it was a novel about the cultivation world, and I was looking forward to it for a long time. As he spoke, Father Wang ground the cigarette butt in the ashtray and couldn't help laughing. Now, I think I'll ask little Ming about it, maybe he'll know. Wang Ling. Father Wang. Do you know about the time capsule? Before your mother decided to close it off, she sealed all the outlines she had written in a capsule and gave it to little Ming. At that time, the paper she used to write on was very rough, and little Ming said that sealing it in this way would ensure that the paper wouldn't be damaged. I'm guessing that when Xiaoming received the outline in drafts, he had probably already read them. Hearing this, the corners of Wang Ling's mouth couldn't help twitching. It wouldn't have mattered if it was anyone else, but if it was Wang Ming, it was indeed possible that he would do such a thing. Furthermore, Wang Ming himself was actually a fan of novels. Even though he clearly couldn't cultivate, he would often imitate the plots of cultivation novels and do some crazy things. Wang Ling's curiosity was piqued again. In any case, Wang Ming would come over later, so he could just drag him upstairs and ask him. Besides, Wang Ling himself was very curious about Mother Wang's unpublished work. As he was thinking this, he heard the sound of the villa door opening. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Lai Mingming very skillfully push open the door and enter. The door of the Wang family's small villa had a fingerprint lock, and as Father Wang's exclusive, he had already entered Lai Mingming's fingerprint into the lock roughly 2 weeks ago. Father Wang still hadn't updated today, so Wang Ling knew that Lai Mingming was most likely here to urge him to update. Ordinary website writers would never be able to enjoy the treatment of an coming to their door to urge them to update. Hi, Wang Ling. You're home. Lai Mingming grinned and greeted Wang Ling. Then his face immediately turned cloudy as he stared helplessly at Father Wang. I say, Brother Wang, why haven't you updated today? Didn't you save a lot of manuscripts? Taking a leisurely sip of coffee, Father Wang replied, I'm done. The corner of Lai Mingming's mouth twitched. If I recall correctly, there should be 200,000 manuscripts in stock. Father Wang. They're all used up, Lai Mingming. Father Wang sighed. Recently, a nouveau riche reader came and said that he would tip me 10,000 for each additional chapter. I couldn't help it and sent them all. Lai Mingming covered his face. Brother Wang, you have to control yourself. Premature ejaculation is bad behavior. Father Wang and Wang Ling. Lai Mingming. Go upstairs, I'll help you sort out the plot. Father Wang shook his head. It's not about the plot this time, but a new character has appeared in the novel, but I don't know how to act it well. It's best to find someone to act it out. I've already prepared the props. A new character? Lai Mingming cupped his chin in his hand and thought for a bit before he nodded. Then let's stick to the old rules. I'll act it out for you. What style? Father Wang. A dark maid lowly in a Gothic style. Lai Mingming smiled. It's just women's clothing, I don't care. It's not my first time. Wang Ling. Father Wang. You have to drip wax. Father Wang. I want to see the truest reaction. Only then will the readers feel it's real. Lai Mingming's eyes welled up with tears. Come on. I'm ready to sacrifice myself for the organization. Wang Ling. So, what kind of play was this? Wang Ming arrived early in the afternoon before the old man, and Mother Wang came back from grocery shopping. When Wang Ling opened the door, he saw Wang Ming standing at the door with a melancholy expression on his face, and Jia Yin following closely behind him. The last time Wang Ling had turned Jia Yin away, it was because Mother Wang and the old man had been cooking in the house at that time. So it was fine if they hadn't seen him. But they still hadn't come back at this time, and Wang Ling thought it wouldn't be good to leave Jia Yin standing at the door alone. So he reluctantly let him in. To be exact, this was the second time Wang Ling and Jia Yin had met face to face. In some sense, Wang Ming felt that Wang Ling and Jia Yin were quite similar. They both had facial paralysis and facial paralysis. The difference, however, was that Wang Ling's facial paralysis was completely natural and untainted, while Jia Yin's facial paralysis was probably a result of having seen countless life and death experiences. After Jia Yin had brought Wang Ming back the last time, he had actually started to secretly investigate Wang Ling. Unfortunately, all he had found was a bunch of mosaics. This time, Wang Ling naturally had his own reasons for directly letting them in. As soon as Wang Ming stepped in, Wang Ling gave Jia Yin a death stare. This stare directly froze Jia Yin in place. Even though Jia Yin was very experienced and knowledgeable, he was so frightened by this imposing aura that his forehead broke out in a cold sweat, and he felt a great pressure from the depths of his soul. It was very obvious that this was a warning. Wang Ming pulled Wang Ling behind him and stared at Jia Yin. I don't care if you follow me outside, but this is my little brother's house, and it's like my own home. If you dare mess around, I'll have President Qi dismiss you. Jia Yin's gaze was a little deep. You can try. Wang Ming crossed his arms and sighed. He had forgotten that this guy was amenable to coaxing, but not coercion. Then, Wang Ming simply stretched out his hand and dragged Jia Yin to the sofa in the living room. Sit down. Whether you want to watch TV or meditate and cultivate, it's up to you. After saying that, Wang Ming suddenly smiled sinisterly to himself and looked at Jia Yin. Stay here and don't move. I'll go get you a tangerine. Wang Ling. Chapter 340. Ever since Wang Ming had met Jia Yin, he had felt as if he had been possessed by a ghost. In other words, this Jia Yin was harder to deal with than a ghost. It looked like he had been warned by Wang Ling at the Wang family's small villa, which was why Jia Yin hadn't followed him. But the truth was that Wang Ming had personally brought it up with President Qi after leaving the villa the last time. If it hadn't been for President Qi's order, Jia Yin would probably have continued to stubbornly follow Wang Ling around today. As soon as he returned to his room on the second floor, Wang Ming plopped down on the bed, as if he had returned to his own room. He truly felt mentally and physically exhausted. The most troublesome thing about this matter was that Jia Yin wasn't afraid of Wang Ming complaining to President Qi at all, which could be seen from his attitude after entering the room just now. After all, President Qi had gone to great lengths to poach this person back then, and President Qi couldn't just dismiss him at his whim. At most, Wang Ming would just raise a suggestion. This was what it meant when it was easy to invite a god in, but hard to send one away, of course. There were a lot of complicated factors involved. Wang Ming was a key target of state protection, so in theory, he couldn't refuse anyone the state arranged for him. It was just that as one of the state's scientific researchers, he couldn't get rid of Jia Yin's protection. Even when he was doing research, the feeling of being watched was too painful. Ling Ling. I want to die. Wang Ming complained as he lay on the bed. Do you know this guy is from the magnificent Immortal Special Forces Brigade? Wang Ling's eyes couldn't help twitching slightly at this title. Since coming into contact with number 60 high school's school guard Old Li, Wang Ling had privately learned about the structure of the National Special Forces. The magnificent Immortal Special Forces Brigade was the star of the Special Forces. and was also the department that directly governed many of them. In comparison, 7 stars, where Old Li was, could only be considered a small branch. Anyone who came out of Magnificent Immortal was an expert, and definitely had impressive strength. Now you should know why President Qi can't send him away after poaching him, right? Wang Ming looked at Wang Ling and sighed helplessly. Also, this guy's identity is very special. Wang Ling? Question mark. Magnificent Immortal owns Huaxiao Nation's largest depository of Buddhist texts, which contains a lot of secret manuals that have been passed down since ancient times. Back then, in order to protect the depository of Buddhist texts, the country specially set up a special force to protect it all day, and Magnificent Immortal was founded on this foundation. Wang Ming said, "Do you know the Sweeping Divine Monk?" Wang Ling nodded. That guy's status is about the same as the Sweeping Divine Monk. He used to look after the scripture pavilion under Magnificent Immortal, and his position was equivalent to that of a librarian. I don't know what kind of snake poison it was, but old Qi dug it up and left it with me. Wang Ling. Perhaps it was because he had been tormented by Zhai Yin every day during this period of time. Wang Ming complained to Wang Ling upstairs for a full half an hour before he was able to vent his pent-up frustrations. He knew that Wang Ling's room had a soundproof barrier, so he wasn't afraid of Zhai Yin hearing him at all. It had been fine when no one had followed him before, but now that Zhai Yin was with him, Wang Ming even had to check his phone's text messages from time to time, which annoyed him. But despite all his complaints, Wang Ling actually knew that Wang Ming had his own selfish motives. Since Wang Ming couldn't be driven away, there was always value in keeping him around. Apart from protecting Wang Ming, Zhai Yin actually had another great potential that could be unearthed. In some sense, Wang Ming felt that Zhai Yin's brain was also quite exquisite, and wasn't inferior to his most powerful brain at all. After all, Zhai Yin had been in Magnificent Immortal's scripture pavilion for hundreds of years, and was now a mobile scripture pavilion. Wang Ming. Ling. You say that this Zhai Yin has such a vast store of knowledge, then is there any record in the scripture pavilion that can help me cultivate? The corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. What kind of nonsense was this guy thinking about? Wang Ming had been unable to cultivate since he was a child because of his physique. But physique wasn't something that could be changed just because you wanted to. Of course, if Wang Ming really wanted to cultivate, it actually wasn't impossible. Wang Ling knew a forbidden spell that could be used in an equivalent exchange, and the most valuable thing on Wang Ming's body was his brain. Exchanging his brain for the possibility of cultivating. In Wang Ling's opinion, this was no different from being mentally retarded. If you didn't even have a brain, how the hell could you cultivate? There are a lot of things hidden in Magnificent Immortal's scripture pavilion that you've never heard of or seen before. Maybe there's a technique inside that can help you suppress your aura, and you might be able to break away from the talisman in the future. Wang Ming cupped his chin and looked at Wang Ling seriously. Ling, why don't you knock Zhai Yin out, and then I'll dissect his head to study it. Wang Ling. Why was he thinking about something so terrifying with a straight face? Ignoring Wang Ming's wild imagination, Wang Ling directly opened his heavenly eye, and took the heavenly materials sword out of its field of vision. It wasn't until he saw this sword that Wang Ming patted his head. He had almost forgotten what he was here for. I'll take this sword back to study it. Wang Ming nodded and put the sword away in his storage ring. The ring was charged with spirit energy. Otherwise, Wang Ming wouldn't have been able to operate the storage space at all without spirit energy. When the ring ran out of spirit energy, Wang Ming would recharge it. Usually, after it was fully charged, Wang Ming could use it for about a week. This kind of semi-black technology cultivation magic treasure was Wang Ming's specialty. Oh, that's right, Lingzi. I also have something for you. Wang Ming manipulated the storage ring on his hand and placed an egg-shaped object the size of a palm into Wang Ling's hand. You probably don't know yet, but this is Auntie's time capsule. Before you were born, Auntie stored the drafts of her novels in this capsule. At that time, Uncle and Auntie asked me to seal up the manuscripts, so I took them back to the lab and made them into time capsules. Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming had an embarrassed expression on his face. But there was a small accident at the time. Wang Ling held the capsule with a puzzled expression. At that time, in order to track down the old devil, generally specially activated the power of the stone gate to send the surveillance chip I had developed back to the past. But before the official process started, that group of people wanted to find something to test it out on. Wang Ling. Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming covered his face helplessly. Then, some idiot sent this time capsule to the past, and it wasn't until recently that it came back. Wang Ling. Wang Ming. So I think it's more reliable to leave it with you. Wang Ling. Wang Ming had been uneasy the whole time when the time capsule had been missing, and now that it was back in Wang Ling's hands, he could finally heave a sigh of relief. Oh, that's right, before Auntie stopped writing, she changed her pen name and wrote a draft of her unpublished work in here. If you're interested, you can take a look, it's pretty well written. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, Wang Ming looked at Wang Ling and said excitedly, "And the pen name is quite domineering. What was it called?" Wang Ling asked. Wang Ming, Numinous Mother. Chapter 341. That night, Wang Ling read all the manuscripts in the time capsule. Killer Taoist had mentioned 1,000 years of death before, and it was indeed Mother Wang who had written it. It came from the outline of a sect of killers in Mother Wang's unpublished novel, and 1,000 years of death was just a small skill in this sect. After confirming Mother Wang's identity, Wang Ling's brain short-circuited that night. He had to admit a horrifying fact. His mother, the mother who had brought him up, had actually transformed from an ordinary housewife into a great ancestor of the world of killers overnight. He didn't tell Wang Ming about this, because the whole thing was so horrifying that it was hard for him to digest it all at once. Furthermore, the most painful part of the whole thing was that Mother Wang had no idea at all that her novel outline would actually have such a profound impact on the world of killers nowadays. It was July 3rd on Monday in the 11th week of the semester. Wang Ling still hadn't fully digested what had happened last night, when something unexpected happened in the school circle at noon today. It all started with number 60 High's neighboring school, God Vision High School. God Vision High School was a high school that the Shao clan had invested in, and there were many Shao clan outer sect disciples in it. Back then, during the 6 schools' joint military training competition, Wang Ling had even fought Xiao Yunqing, who was ranked number 1 among the Shao clan's outer sect disciples. And the cause of the entire incident revolved around Xiao Yunqing. According to an insider, Dopey Gua, Xiao Yunqing had clashed with the PE teacher during God Vision High School's PE class that morning. Everyone thought that Xiao Yunqing would suffer, but the result was unexpected. When the PE teacher had charged at Xiao Yunqing had sent the golden core teacher flying with the backhand of his hand. According to Xiao Yunqing's account after the incident, he hadn't actually used much strength, but it was like he had seen a ghost. The effect was outstanding. A simple push to resist had sent the PE teacher flying more than 10 meters away. The most important thing was that the PE teacher had been injured internal injuries. Everyone in class who heard this news had indescribably shocked expressions on their faces. To most people's knowledge, no matter how outstanding a foundation establishment student was in all aspects, there was no way he could touch a golden core teacher. Furthermore, God Vision High School was very strict and had top-notch teachers. Even the PE teacher was a carefully selected elite teacher. How could a foundation establishment stage student defeat a golden core stage teacher? At first, when many people heard the news, they thought it was just a rumor. But soon, videos were posted on Tieba, WeChat, and WeChat Moments. The video was a surveillance video of God Vision High School's field. It captured everything that had happened. It was probably a teacher from God Vision High School who had accidentally sent it to his relatives or friends. Then, it instantly spread through the power of the internet. When the video reached Dopigua's hands, he cleverly made a copy of the recording. After that, many people found that the video had been deleted by the terminal. What the hell is going on? After watching the video, Little Peanut was still a little skeptical. The gap between the foundation establishment stage and the golden core stage seemed to be only one stage. But for many people, the gap before this stage was undoubtedly a long one. So when they thought of this, many people couldn't help but tremble. This can't be true, right? Although our teacher Yi is actually pretty weak among the PE teachers, he's still at the golden core stage. I don't even dare imagine any student in our school being able to teach teacher Yi a lesson. Hearing this, the corners of Wang Ling's mouth couldn't help twitching. What did teacher Yi do to provoke you? Was there a need to talk so badly behind my back? But teacher Yi indeed wasn't strong. This was the truth. During the lunch break, the topic in the class exploded again because of this matter. How did a foundation establishment stage student send a gold core stage teacher flying? This was a very mysterious question. Could it be because he ate Shuego Sect's fruit? Some smart people recalled the previous Shuego Sect incident. Over the weekend, Dopigua had said in the class group chat that the 12 missing students who had been taken away had been force-fed a fruit by Shuego Sect and had only been released after a few days of confinement. Xiao Yunqing was one of the 12 students who had lost contact with him. Combined with some of the information that Killer Taoist had gathered when he had visited the villa, Wang Ling was basically certain that Xiao Yunqing's sudden divine power had to have been caused by eating that fruit. Furthermore, looking at the current situation, the situation didn't look good. A push that could send a golden core expert flying and cause him internal injuries wasn't that awesome. Not even the Taiji push hand. This at least meant that after the fruit entered the bodies of Xiao Yunqing and the other students, it had already produced a huge amount of energy. As long as the concentration of the energy accumulated to a certain extent, when the students could no longer withstand it, their bodies would explode. This was the spirit explosion that Killer Taoist had mentioned before. Wang Ling lowered his head in thought. There was not much time left for the national football team. The students. That afternoon, Shuego Sect and the 12 missing students once again became a hot topic of discussion. Furthermore, after the incident with Xiao Yunqing, the other students had also tested the strength of the students who had been abducted by Shuego Sect. Every one of the missing students had actually reached the late golden core stage. Moreover, this power was still on the rise. As soon as news of this spread, Wang Ling could already hear a lot of envious, jealous, and hateful voices in the school. It turns out that cultivation is really such an easy thing these days. Nowadays, eating a fruit will increase your strength as if you've turned on a cheat. I beg to be caught. I want to be a fruit user too. Before school was over in the afternoon, Wang Ling had already seen a lot of students on Tieba asking Shuego Sect to take them away to eat fruit and transform their bodies, in some envious or teasing tones. Even the top students in the school would inevitably feel a ripple in their hearts when they heard about this, let alone those students who were usually slightly weaker. In the final analysis, this matter returned back to the stone ghost mask incident from back then. Countless cultivators listened to the rumors and chased after the stone ghost mask like a flock of ducks, all for the sake of inheriting the so-called orthodoxy and taking a shortcut in cultivation. But did real cultivation really have a shortcut? When Wang Ling got home that evening, he received a rare express delivery. The sender of the express delivery was anonymous. Wang Ling opened the package and saw that it actually contained a fiery red fruit. Wang Ling narrowed his eyes and quickly opened the class group chat. Sure enough, there were other people in class who had taken photos and posted them in the group, saying that they had received the fruit. Furthermore, more and more people gradually sent messages, saying that they had received the fruit. Based on this situation, Wang Ling estimated that all the students at number 60 high had probably received one. Now, he knew why Shuego Sect hadn't attacked number 60 high before. Chapter 342. It was a very long process to go from the foundation establishment stage to the golden core stage. If one day there is such an opportunity in front of you, you only need to eat a fruit, and you will be able to obtain a steady stream of power. In just a few days, you will be able to obtain divine power, surpass Jindan in one fell swoop, and even develop to a higher realm. Will you eat this fruit, or not? If they knew that they didn't have to bear any risks, Wang Ling felt that most people would choose to eat it without hesitation. But now, no one knew if there would be any other side effects from eating this fruit. Perhaps some people would eat it, but when Wang Ling looked at the chat logs in the class group, he saw that most of the people in class were actually rational. They weren't affected by Xiao Yunqing's display of invincible might during the day, when he had sent a golden core teacher flying. There were no shortcuts in cultivation. Similarly, there was no such thing as a pie falling from the sky for no reason. Wang Ling felt that this couldn't be considered a mistake on Shuigo Sect's part. Although the majority of the students were rational in this situation, there were bound to be a lot of them who chose to eat the fruit. Because for Shuigo Sect, as long as one student from number 60 high ate the fruit, their plan would be considered a success. That night, the incident quickly spread and shocked the entire media circle. Because they didn't know what was fishy about the fruit, the General Administration of 100 schools immediately issued a notice that night for the teachers of number 60 high to go from house to collect the fruit. As for the students who had already eaten the fruit, they would be sent to the hospital for a full body checkup. Wang Ling scrolled through the comments online and saw a post in Grenade-throwing Senior Immortals Cultivation Forum. Question: what do you think about number 60 high's collective collection of Shuigo Sect's fruit? Are there really shortcuts in cultivation? Does this count as cheating? The person who replied was Abbot Jihu, a very knowledgeable and experienced person in the forum. When the chat group had been set up back then, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had in fact personally invited this abbot to join, but the latter had tactfully declined. According to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal at the time, the abbot was a wise man who had seen through the world of mortals. Abbot Jihu claimed that he disdained joining a chat group, which relied on information technology to bring people closer together. What he pursued was a spiritual connection, and a spiritual connection. As a result, Abbot Jihu often appeared in various posts on the cultivation forum to explain the spiritual confusion of the people. This question was posted by a netizen on the cultivation forum at around 6 o'clock in the evening. Abbot Jihu's response was quite swift. He took a short video and quickly posted it in the replies section of the thread. In the video, Abbot Jihu was holding a scroll and opening it. It was a famous landscape painting. Through the video, Wang Ling could clearly see the ancient poem on this landscape painting. Picking chrysanthemums under the eastern fence, leisurely gazing upon the southern mountain. Then, Abbot Jihu held the scroll in his hand and hung it on the wall. The video on the forum had a bullet screen function. Many people couldn't help but send a bullet screen when they saw this. Someone knows why Abbot Jihu is doing this. Could it be that the chrysanthemum in this painting is a heavenly secret? Is the abbot trying to tell us that instead of discussing this so-called cultivation shortcut, it's better to properly immerse ourselves in the mountains and rivers? Who knows? We might be able to comprehend the truth of heaven and earth one day. Wang Ling saw a row of bullet screen comments float by in the video. At that moment, Abbot Jihu actually spread out his right hand, and instantly, there was boundless golden light under his kasaya. Someone left a comment in the bullet screen. F***K. This is Abbot Jihu's unique skill, the Great Sun Vajra Palm. Rumor had it that when this palm technique was used, it would produce an intense light as bright as the sun, hence its name. Abbot Jihu's move caught a lot of people off guard, and a lot of them couldn't take it in. Everyone saw the strong light in the video accompanied by a loud bang. After the light dissipated, the wall with the landscape painting had already been reduced to ashes along with the painting, dispersing in the wind. What on earth does Abbot Jihu mean by this? Everyone stop spamming. Listen to Abbot Jihu's explanation. At the same time, a lot of bullet screen comments popped up. After tearing down the wall, Abbot Jihu slowly turned around and gave the camera a Buddhist salute. Amipa. Excellent, excellent. There are no shortcuts in cultivation to begin with. This old monk has already used action just now to prove that there's no good ending for hanging on the wall. Everyone. Wang Ling. Since the students had returned home from school until it was past 8 o'clock in the evening, the fruit incident had already thoroughly fermented on the internet. This time, Shuigo Sect had sent fruit, and practically every student in number 60 high had received one. And it was only limited to number 60 high school. This was an act of revenge against number 60 high school. Back when Old Antique had still been gorgeous itinerant, he had accidentally killed Taoist Taoye's adopted son, Black Gauze. And now, Taoist Taotai wanted to wipe out all the students in number 60 high school to avenge his adopted son, Black Gauze. Wang Ling felt that even Old Antique himself had never expected this matter to blow up so much. For Ajua, who didn't know the whole story, it was even more of a pain in the ass. He realized that every time there was a major incident in Songhai City, number 60 high school would definitely be involved. This was simply toxic. While Wang Ling was still thinking about countermeasures, Ajua had already sent him a complaining text message with just a few words. Shifu. Help Shifu. Wang Ling. His phone had been busy all this time, so he could only use this method to contact Wang Ling. Wang Ling had thought of a way, but he didn't know if it would work. Just as he was about to call someone, that person actually directly called him at that moment, as if he had been possessed by a roundworm. Hello, Brother Ling? Did you see the news? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's voice came out of the phone. I'm guessing that there will definitely be students who will eat this fruit. Based on the analysis of the current situation, the fruits should form enormous clusters of spiritual energy inside the bodies of those people. If they only relied on the bodies of the building foundation stage cultivators, they would explode when the clusters of spiritual energy were saturated. Now, we have to think of a way to absorb the spirit power in these students' bodies. Speaking up to this point, both Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Wang Ling tacitly thought of the same thing. The heavenly materials sword left behind by the master of Immortal Mansion. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Brother Feng Xing has already woken up. I called him just now to understand the situation. When the heavenly materials sword struck him, he clearly felt the spirit power in his body being continuously drawn out by the sword. Wang Ling nodded silently. He knew that this was the effect of the sword's Wang Ling matter. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed. So there's actually no other way to solve this problem now. We can only take the heavenly materials sword and slash each of these students once. Although this method did sound a little brutal, it was actually pretty much what Wang Ling had in mind. Chapter 343. After the call with Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Wang Ling immediately sent a text message to Wang Ming. Wang Ming had just retrieved the heavenly materials sword, and Wang Ling couldn't directly touch it. This was a very important matter, and someone had to handle it. Wang Ling felt that it wouldn't be a bad idea to leave it to Wang Ming. The heavenly materials sword didn't have a sword spirit, so there was no need to worry about how to control it. Furthermore, Wang Ming had a ring that stored spirit energy, so he just needed to rely on spirit energy to drive the heavenly materials sword. And even Wang Ming would be able to use it easily. In the research room, Wang Ming was exceptionally excited when he received Wang Ling's message. Relying on his own strength to save those lost lambs wandering the cultivation path gave Wang Ming a secret sense of satisfaction. Although Wang Ming had been born unable to cultivate because of his physique, the heroism in his heart was much more intense than that of an orthodox cultivator. He had left the heavenly materials sword in the research room and hadn't had time to seal it up. Wang Ming took off the ring on his finger which stored spirit energy and connected it to the spirit power crystal on the side. The light on the ring flickered rhythmically. After about 5 minutes, Wang Ming took off the ring that was full of spirit energy, raised his hand to pick up the heavenly materials sword from the table, and tiptoed out of the research room. But just as he approached the door, he sensed an icy aura behind him, and a hand rested on his shoulder, scaring him so much that he shivered all over. It's so late, where are you going? Jia Yin's voice sounded. Wang Ming secretly heaved a sigh of relief, and pretended to be calm as he looked at Jia Yin. Oh, I'm going for a walk. Jia Yin folded his arms and looked at him. I'll go with you. Wang Ming hadn't expected that his plan to save the world would actually be thwarted here, before he could even sell it. No, he couldn't give up. I'll be back soon. I'll give you the night off. You don't have to follow me around. Wang Ming knew that Jai Yin was the type who could be persuaded by reason, but not cowed by force. At a time like this, a stern reprimand was completely useless, and would only serve to add fuel to the fire. If you're coming back immediately, why did you fill your ring with spiritual power? Jai Yin stared at Wang Ming with an unreadable expression, making him shudder. Wang Ming had heard from President Qi, before Jai Yin had been transferred to the depository of Buddhist texts, as a librarian in the magnificent Immortal Special Combat Brigade. She had mainly been involved in criminal investigation. Furthermore, she had done a lot of research on criminal psychology, and had written a famous book called Psychological Intoxication. Wang Ming had been dubious before, but now he could finally verify the authenticity of this matter. Wang Ming felt like that fish in a song, and now he was very irritated. How did that song go again? He couldn't help but turn into a stubborn fish, swimming alone against Jai Yin. He couldn't break free. He couldn't escape. Wang Ming struggled endlessly in his heart, and simply felt the urge to cry. You can't fool me. President Qi gave me the task of following you closely. Jai Yin's gaze was fixed on Wang Ming. People always looked guilty when they lied, and Wang Ming was of course no exception. He looked away with a face full of shame, unable to meet Jai Yin's gaze. He couldn't tell what on earth was in this gaze. It looked cold, but there seemed to be a kind of blazing heat in it. No, this was an illusion. This had to be a F***king illusion. The corners of Wang Ming's mouth twitched. Jai Yin was a man. How could a man look at him with such passion? But on second thought, Wang Ming cupped his chin in deep thought. He wondered if it was possible that Jai Yin was gay and had taken a fancy to him. This was a pretty bold idea, but Wang Ming felt that it was indeed possible. Thinking this, Wang Ming patted Jai Yin on the shoulder and sighed. It's not your fault, it's my fault. Wang Ming felt that it must be because he had teased Wang Ling too much, which was why Jai Yin had the misconception that he was gay. But the problem was that Wang Ming was F***king straight. Straighter than a guess pine tree. Jai Yin. Wang Ming. I know. I've always been a smart, tall, handsome, tender-skinned straight-A student like me. And I've always been full of controversy and admiration. In fact, I've always had people pursuing me since I was a child. Jai Yin. Wang Ming. Actually, I'm very pleased that you fell for me. It shows that you have high standards. Jai Yin. Wang Ming. But we really aren't suitable. We're the same gender, how can we date? I'm still hoping to give birth to the strongest brain, 2S. So don't expect to use old Qi to pressure me, and always follow me. Sometimes distance makes beauty, understand? Hearing this, Jai Yin's face had already turned red, and he said in a very low voice, You say that again. Wang Ming was very patient as he repeated each word. I said only distance produces beauty. There's no chance between us. Jai Yin took a deep breath, and finally couldn't take it anymore. I'm a woman. You idiot. Wang Ming. Huh. Wang Ming felt like his 3 views had been severely impacted. You're Hua Mulan who joined the army in place of your father. That's not right. Your stomach muscles are as hard as stone. How can you be a girl? Jai Yin. Anyone who was brought into magnificent immortal at a young age would have abdominal muscles as hard as stone after cultivating for a few hundred years. Furthermore, there's no rule that says girls aren't allowed to have abdominal muscles. Secondly, judging gender by muscles alone, I seriously doubt that your title of the strongest brain is a gift from the supermarket. Wang Mingjiang Xinjiang stared at Jai Yin suspiciously. Actually, it would have been better if Jai Yin hadn't said anything. Now that she had mentioned that she was a girl, when Wang Ming carefully examined Jai Yin's ice-cold face, he really did notice some feminine details. For example, he noticed that Jai Yin's eyebrows were actually very thin. At that moment, Jai Yin took off his military cap. This was the first time Jai Yin had taken it off in front of Wang Ming. When she usually wore the military cap, Wang Ming had always thought that Jai Yin had a buzz cut. But as soon as the cap was taken off, A head of waist-length hair instantly spread out like magic. The corners of Wang Ming's mouth twitched. This guy was actually a girl. This is a magic artifact. I've never shown this head of hair to anyone before. You're the first, Jiayin said as he looked at Wang Ming. After proving his identity, he put his cap back on with an indifferent expression on his face, and his hair instantly disappeared. I know that you looked for President Qi before and asked him to give you a beautiful bodyguard. Saying this, the corners of Jiayin's mouth couldn't help curling up slightly. Now, do you know why President Qi didn't respond to your request? Wang Ming. Chapter 344. Wang Ming realized a very serious problem. He realized that he had been tricked by President Qi, and very thoroughly at that. If Jiayin hadn't personally confessed to him today, he would never have thought that she was actually a F***king girl. He was amazed to realize that there really were 3 genders in this world: men, women, and Jiayin. In that instant, Wang Ming's heart was filled with despair. Why did she have to let him know about this? After Jiayin revealed her identity, Wang Ming was well aware that this guy was completely fixated on him. There was no way he could hide this. And if he wanted to go out, he would have to go through Jiayin. Wang Ming grit his teeth. Big sister, I beg you, can you be magnanimous and let me go? No way. Jiayin shook her head and said indifferently in a cold voice. After the negotiation failed, Wang Ming sighed helplessly and leaned against the door of the lab. Don't you know that something happened at my little brother's school? I have to go help him. You mean the Shuego sect incident? Jiayin's eyes darkened. Of course she knew. This incident had alarmed the media 2 hours ago, and when she turned on her phone, practically all the apps had pushed this news. But when she saw Wang Ming seriously say that he was going to help, she still couldn't help sneering. What do you think you can do? Are you a cultivator? Or a savior? Someone will deal with this matter, and my job here is to protect your brain. Wang Ming smiled bitterly and couldn't help retorting, Don't look down on me. Given my brain, even if my IQ was the square root, it would still be higher than your IQ squared. After saying this, Wang Ming clearly felt the temperature around them plummet. Jiayin looked at him coldly. Say that again? Wang Ming didn't look her in the eye, and hurriedly turned his head to change his words. Well, what I mean is, if you want to follow me, just don't get in my way. It's rare for my little brother to text me to ask for help. How can I refuse? Jiayin gnashed her teeth. Don't worry. President Qi only gave me the task of protecting your brain. Whether you live or die has nothing to do with me. That's good. Please don't interfere. Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming was amused. He hugged his chest tightly with the panicked look of an innocent young man being teased. Then he looked at Jiayin with a despicable expression. Even if my brain is gone, don't even think about getting my body. His expression was really asking for a beating, and it angered Jiayin to the point he clenched his fists tightly and gnashed his teeth. A moment later, she sucked in a cold breath of air and made way for Wang Ming, tacitly agreeing to this operation. In the surveillance room, President Qi drank his coffee and stared at the screen with a calm expression on his face. Old Qi was an experienced man. He could understand what was going on between youngsters with just a few words. Although President Qi didn't know what on earth had happened between Jiayin and Wang Ming, some things in the end could only be understood and not explained. In fact, apart from the fact that Jiayin was a woman, Wang Ming didn't know that when President Qi had asked the state to assign him official bodyguards, it was Jiayin herself who had applied to come here. Magnificent Immortal Special Army Brigade. President Qi admitted that he didn't have the ability to take the initiative to poach someone from this place. So when he saw Wang Ming and Jiayin leave the lab one after the other after an argument, President Qi sipped his coffee and couldn't help sighing. Nowadays, being tsundere could ruin a life. Jiayin drove the Aiguanhai tank forward, and following Wang Ming's instructions, it finally stopped in front of the office of the General Administration of 100 Schools. After Wang Ling had sent Wang Ming a text message, Ajwa had also received Wang Ling's message. Knowing that Wang Ming was coming, Ajwa had been waiting downstairs early in the morning. It could be said that every second now was a race against time. Deputy Director Zhong Lang had just rushed over from home to take Ajua's place to deal with the media, which wanted to create big news every day. Ajua stood respectfully at the door of the car. Wang Ming slowly rolled down the window and glanced at him. "You're Ajua? Get in." Whether it was from Wang Ling or the recent news, Wang Ming had heard a lot about Ajua. This director, who was in the limelight at the moment, was more or less connected to almost every recent hot topic that had shaken the country. Of course, Wang Ming was well aware that the reason why Ajua could appear in these hot topics was probably because of Wang Ling. In some sense, Wang Ming felt sorry for Ajua. He had to shoulder so many things at such a young age. After getting in the car, Ajua looked Wang Ming up and down with trepidation. He knew that his Shifu had a cousin, but he had never seen him with his own eyes. Seeing him in person for the first time, Ajua was taken aback by the logo on Wang Ming's white coat and the medal pinned to his chest. It was a medal of a national academician and a full 10 stars. There were less than 3 people in the country who were qualified to wear this kind of medal. After seeing Wang Ming's medal, Ajua's eyes darted to the epaulette on Jia Yin's shoulder, and he instantly cursed in his heart. Magnificent Immortal Special Army Brigade. Ajua felt a little intimidated. Wang Ming couldn't help smiling as he looked at Ajua and said, "Don't be too nervous. This person in front is just my female bodyguard and driver." When he spoke, Wang Ming placed particular emphasis on the word female, which made the corners of Jia Yin's mouth twitch slightly. Ajua was startled again. "CC driver." Inviting someone from the magnificent Immortal Special Army Brigade to be a driver. Wasn't this a little too much? As expected of Shifu's cousin, this is the first time I've heard that there are actually female soldiers in the magnificent Immortal Special Army Brigade, Ajua exclaimed. "That's not the point, brother." Wang Ming sked and straightaway pointed at the driver's seat. "The point is, tell me, when this guy puts her hair back, which part of her looks like a woman from head to toe?" Jia Yin grit her teeth and tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Ajua shook his head. "Teacher Wang, you're wrong. Actually, if you look closely you can still see it. After all, men and women have different characteristics. Shouldn't people in scientific research respect science?" For a moment, Wang Ming couldn't refute this. After a while, he waved his hand and couldn't help but reveal a tragic expression on his face. "How I wish that my female bodyguard cum female driver was a proper and cute girl." Hearing this, Ajua shook his head again. "Teacher Wang, your words are actually a little ambiguous, Wang Ming." Ajua. Sometimes it's actually a good thing to clearly know a person's gender. Also, you shouldn't judge others just because they look more androgynous. There are a lot of cute girls online now who look cute, but are bigger than you. Jia Yin. Chapter 345. Shangyun Road, Songhai City. God Vision High School, a key city high school invested in by the Xiao clan, was on Shangyun Road. After Ajua got into the car, Jia Yin drove the 3 of them to the intersection of Shangyun Road. Jia Yin parked the car on the side of the road. Both sides of the road had already been cordoned off, and several teams of armed police were standing guard at the intersection. "Is this it?" Wang Ming got out of the car, sword in hand. Through the overlapping buildings on Shangyun Road, he could see the school flag fluttering in the air in God Vision High School's square. All the residents and pedestrians on Shangyun Road had already been evacuated by the police before Ajua arrived. Because of the urgency of the situation, the students had been driven home before the flag of God Vision High School could be lowered. Most importantly, there was no homework today. According to the information provided by Ajua, all the students in the city who had eaten the unknown fruit were now under the direct control of the General Administration of 100 schools. They had all been sent to Second Cultivation People's Hospital's independent ward for treatment in isolation, and the situation could be considered under control to a certain extent. But because they currently couldn't distinguish the specific composition of the spirit fruit, They couldn't completely block the spirit power it produced in the children's bodies for the time being. They could only rely on physical, or more powerful chemical methods to suppress it. On the way here, Audiobook told Wang Ming that Director Li of 2nd Cultivation People's Hospital's independent ward had just called him. All the specialist doctors and medical staff had arrived. They had given up their own rest time to work at the hospital, and had convened an emergency meeting with a group of alchemists sent by the Shao clan, as well as Immortal Toya. This matter couldn't be delayed. Without effective measures to block it, with the hospital's current equipment and medicine, the most they could do was delay the spirit power produced by the fruit until 6 o'clock the day after tomorrow. At that time, the spirit power in the students' bodies would reach saturation, and a spirit explosion would occur. Of course, there was one exception. It was God Vision High School's Xiao Yunqing. It's been confirmed that Xiao Yunqing is on this road. He directly threw out the teams of armed police who went in earlier. Audiobook said as he wiped his sweat. Thrown out? So ruthless? Wang Ming was startled. That's right, Golden Corps armed police officers were thrown out like scarecrows. And they couldn't resist at all. Audiobook sighed. From what we've heard from the hospital, the children in the hospital can be suppressed until the morning the day after tomorrow. But if we let this Xiao Yunqing go on like this, he'll explode tonight at 12 o'clock. Hearing this, Wang Ming nodded. No wonder they used such a big force, and even set up a barrier at the exit of the road. This barrier is a little weak. Jiayin pursed her lips. If a spirit explosion occurs, this barrier won't be able to stop it at all. But at least it can prevent Xiao Yunqing from escaping. Audiobook looked at the barrier. Even if it's a small spirit explosion like this, once it happens, the entire Shengyun Road and the area within a radius of 30 kilometers will suffer. Right now, the orders from above are to minimize the damage while protecting Xiao Yunqing. If it really doesn't work, then we'll just have to kill him. That spirit fruit has the ability to devour minds, and no one knows what will happen next. The Shao clan has already signed the agreement. You even signed the agreement? Wang Ming hadn't expected the situation to develop so seriously. No wonder Audiobook had brought them here as the first stop. Wang Ming had listened to Audiobook's explanation of the specific side effects of the fruit in the car. Apart from producing a steady stream of psionic energy that would eventually form a psionic explosion, it also had the effect of devouring one's mind. Furthermore, the side effect of devouring one's mind was also related to one's physique. Simply put, the more Chinibyu a person was, the more they would be affected. Most of the students in foundation establishment high schools were 16 years old like Wang Ling. Unfortunately, this age just happened to be Chinibyu age. Nowadays, with the continuous advancement of modern cultivation technology, the time needed to go from body tempering to qi condensation to foundation establishment was getting shorter and shorter. Thousands of years ago, many cultivators would have had to work hard for no less than 100 years just to reach the foundation establishment realm. Thus, in today's great era of national cultivation, the first problem with younger foundation establishment cultivators was that they weren't mature enough. At the end of the day, Xiao Yunqing was only a 16-year-old child. If he suddenly discovered that his strength had increased explosively one day, it would definitely make Xiao Yunqing wonder if he was the chosen one sent by the heavens to save the world. His mentality would immediately explode. Seeing Wang Ming's pensive expression, Audiobook couldn't help asking, "Teacher Wang, what are you thinking about?" I just suddenly remembered my lost youth." Wang Ming suddenly remembered that when he was Wang Ling's age, he had in fact also had this problem. Although he knew that he actually wasn't much older than Xiao Yunqing, 16 years old was, in the end, a watershed for Chinibyu, Audiobook. Wang Ming. Back then, I especially liked to read novels, and spent all day thinking about whether or not I could find an ancient magic artifact on the street. It would be best if it had an old grandpa or grandma or something. Audiobook. Wang Ming. Also, I especially liked to travel, and hoped that I would fall into some mysterious cave. Generally speaking, there are lost martial arts in caves. Audiobook. The corners of Jia Yin's mouth couldn't help twitching at these words. It could be said that Wang Ming had once again refreshed her understanding of the word Chinibu. The surrounding police and armed police officers who heard this conversation fell silent. Audiobook felt that even the air had frozen. A moment later, it was the captain of the armed police who was in charge of setting up the barrier, who broke the dead silence, and said to Audiobook, "Director Zhua, the entrance to the barrier has already been prepared. But there's a problem." "Audiobook, what problem?" "The barrier entrance has a code scanning mechanism, and you need to carry the corresponding Dao talismans to enter. Just now the barrier master only made 2. Speaking up to this point, the captain of the armed police had already sensed Jia Yin's gaze on him. He stole a glance at the epaulets on Jia Yin's shoulders, and saw that she was from the magnificent Immortal Special Army Brigade. He immediately broke out in a cold sweat, and even his voice was a lot lower. "Forcibly entering the barrier will destroy its structure." Wang Ming nodded. "Then I'll go in with Director Zhua. The commander of the operation this time is Director Zhua." Jia Yin's face darkened at these words. At this point, Audiobook finally realized that the relationship between Wang Ming and Jia Yin was a little complicated, and he suddenly looked a little embarrassed. "Is this okay? Why not? Women shouldn't get involved in men's business." As Wang Ming spoke, he sighed a little emotionally in his heart. "I can finally get away from this demoness." But as soon as he said this, the captain of the armed police next to him suddenly opened his eyes wide and started to look Jia Yin up and down carefully, clearly questioning her gender. Jia Yin silently clenched her fists and opened her eyes to glare. The captain of the armed police felt a chill run down his spine. Then, the helmet cracked like a watermelon and fell to the ground in several pieces. Staring at the helmet on the ground, the captain of the armed police was extremely amazed. Bai Shui's scene was really too scary. Chapter 346. In the end, under Jia Yin's resentful gaze, Wang Ming and Audiobook entered the barrier one after the other. The armed police captain, whose helmet had been shattered by Wang Ming's gaze, knelt on the ground with a despondent look on his face. He wanted to cry but had no tears to shed. Putting aside the fact that this helmet was public property, his salary would be deducted if it was damaged outside. The most important thing was that this charaba was really too scary. Jia Yin gnashed her teeth as she watched Wang Ming and Audiobook walk into the barrier. The temperature in the vicinity had already dropped to freezing point, and the police and armed police officers nearby all stared at Jia Yin as they stood ramrod straight, not daring to say a word. As Wang Ming had said, the overall commander of this operation was actually Audiobook. Jia Yin was from Magnificent Immortal and had good military training, so it was impossible for her to refute a superior's order. And it just so happened that this was what depressed Jia Yin the most. She could only watch helplessly as Wang Ming walked into the barrier, but there was nothing she could do. She simply wanted to rip off the magnificent immortal medal on her shoulder. But she had applied to become Wang Ming's personal guard on her own, and the old commander of the army had once made a pact with her, giving her a 3-year deadline. Once the time limit was up, she would have to return to work in her former army unit. Thus, Jia Yin was still a member of Magnificent Immortal. As long as she had this identity, she would have to give face to her old unit. There was nothing she could do about it. Taking a deep breath, Jia Yin did her best to calm down, and glanced at the armed police captain next to her out of the corner of her eye. "Where's the barrier master?" The armed police captain. "Ah. Jia Yin. Tell him to make the talisman to enter the barrier in 10 minutes. The armed police captain's face instantly turned a little unsightly. "That's a little difficult. Unless he cheated." Jia Yin stared at the captain with an extremely serious expression. 10 minutes is already the limit of my tolerance. If you can't make it and something happens to that idiot in the white coat inside, forget your armed police detachment. Your entire branch will suffer." After saying this, Jia Yin looked straight ahead and didn't say another word. Wang Ming's identity as the strongest brain was a state secret that even Audra didn't know about. Not to mention the police and armed police who were involved in the operation. Therefore, Jiayin felt that it was meaningless to argue with them. On the other hand, Wang Ming's rejection of her was also a little unexpected. However, there was no rush. There were still 3 years left. Jiayin felt that it was more than enough to reform this fool. Carrying the heavenly materials sword wrapped in layers of seals on his back, Wang Ming walked with Audra on the deserted Shangyun Road. They had been plastered with aura-concealing and invisibility talismans, but Audra felt that they wouldn't be very effective. The armed police who had gone in to arrest Xiao Yunqing had also been plastered with talismans and had been thrown out one by one. Some of the shops on the road were still lit. Some of the shop owners had not had time to pack up after receiving the evacuation notice, so they did not even close their doors. Along the way, Audra looked carefully at the spirit sword on Wang Ming's back, which was wrapped in layers of seals, and asked, "Is the sword on Teacher Wang's back the heavenly materials sword that he seized from the master of Immortal Mansion?" Wang Ming nodded and couldn't help laughing. "I wanted to say before, don't call me teacher, it sounds so awkward. He's even a teacher." Audra. "Wang Ming. I have another name, Wang Shower. Just call me Brother Air." Audra. "Then Brother Air, where are we going now?" Wang Ming looked around. "We can only look for higher ground first." It had already been an hour and a half since the last batch of armed police who had been sent in to arrest Xiao Yunqing had returned. They had been thrown out one by one and hadn't been injured. It could be said that they had been very lucky. But Wang Ming guessed that Xiao Yunqing had probably still been conscious at that time, and hadn't completely lost his mind because of the fruit. But it was hard to say now. So much time had already passed, and his mental state would definitely deteriorate as time went on. To be honest, Wang Ming really didn't have much confidence in this operation. Whether or not he could save Xiao Yunqing would depend on his luck. Most of the buildings on Shangyun Road were ancient style, and this was a very famous street with only a few high-rise buildings. Wang Ming and Audra stepped into the tax bureau on Shangyun Road one after another, and directly took the elevator to the top floor. They took the elevator to the 25th floor in one go, and then climbed the stairs to the roof. It wasn't a long distance, but Wang Ming looked a little breathless with the heavenly materials sword on his back. Audra had weighed the sword before. The master of Immortal Mansion had been very particular about the materials used to cast the sword, and it was very light. Even a foundation establishment cultivator would be able to pick it up effortlessly. But seeing Wang Ming so strained, Audra felt that it was a little strange. "Brother Air, are you all right?" Standing on the roof, Wang Ming put his hands on his knees and gasped for breath. I'm fine. It's just that I haven't exercised in a long time, and I'm a little out of breath. I'm used to staying in the lab." Audra. "May I ask Brother Air's realm?" Wang Ming. "HM? Didn't Ling Ling tell you?" "I'm an ordinary person. You don't think I'm stronger than Ling Ling, just because I'm his cousin, do you?" Audra felt like an arrow had been shot in the knee at these words. But even if he was an ordinary person, this Wang Ming's white coat from the Cultivation Academy of Science and the medal on his chest weren't fake. So on some level, Audra felt that Wang Ming was in fact a monster. But the problem was that given their current lineup, it would be very difficult for them to deal with Xiao Yunqing when he was in a berserk state. Audra felt his head hurt a little. "I've studied this heavenly materials sword. The material inside is very special. It's strong when it meets a strong opponent, and weak when it meets a weak opponent. This sword actually suits me pretty well, but it's a little heavy for me. But it's perfect for dealing with Xiao Yunqing." Wang Ming said, "As long as I can make a small wound on him, this operation will be considered a success." Saying this, Wang Ming suddenly took a step back and directly tugged at Audra's lapel, forcibly pulling it open to take a look inside. Audra was horrified. Brother Air, I'm straight." Wang Ming. "Nonsense. I'm also F*** *** king straight." Ajwa. Then you, Wang Ming. I'm checking to see if you're wearing the long johns Ling Ling gave you. So it's like that. Realization dawned on Ajwa. Seeing that you're wearing the long johns, I'm a lot more at ease. This operation actually won't be dangerous for us. Saying this, Wang Ming also pulled the long johns out of his clothes and looked at Ajwa. See, it's the same style. Ajwa. When the time comes, if we really stop Xiao Yunqing, and in the off chance that there really is a spirit explosion, do you know what you're going to do? Ajwa. Wang Ming said. What you need to do is to quickly tuck the long johns into your long johns. Then stretch them out and tie up your exposed feet with rubber bands. The last step is to pull the long johns up and cover your entire head. That way, you'll be able to escape disaster. This is the correct posture for fully armed long johns. Ajwa. Chapter 347. Looking from the top of the tall building, this barrier actually didn't cover a large area, and one could clearly see the faint light film formed by the barrier, which looked like a birdcage in the distance. Even so, it was still a little difficult to catch a person in this complex of streets and buildings. Ajwa saw Wang Ming cross his arms and stare straight ahead with his eyes closed, as if he was thinking about something. Indeed, he couldn't sense any fluctuations of spirit energy from Wang Ming. He was an ordinary person through and through. But in some sense, Ajwa felt that Wang Ming wasn't ordinary at all. During the 6 schools joint military training exercise last time, Wang Ming had entered the world of survival as a magic treasure maintenance expert. But Ajwa hadn't run into him at that time. Now that he thought about it carefully, he suddenly felt that it was a little scary. He recalled that when Wang Ling had entered the world of survival, his signal had been blocked, which proved that Wang Ming had definitely been with Wang Ling and had used his authority to turn off Wang Ling's signal. At that time, Wang Ming had definitely seen Wang Ling close the gate between worlds with his bare hands. It was rare for a person to see such a grand scene in their lifetime. As an ordinary person, Ajwa had the intuition that Wang Ming might not necessarily have seen less of the world than a true cultivator. The two of them stood on the rooftop of the tall building, enjoying the breeze. Although this area wasn't big, Ajwa's spiritual senses alone couldn't cover the entire barrier, and it was already impossible for him to sense Xiao Yunqing's aura. Wang Ming speculated that there had to be some kind of command in Shuego Sek's fruit. Since Shuego Sek's ultimate goal was to create a spirit explosion, the command would control the students who had eaten the fruit to hide. So now the only problem was locating Xiao Yunqing. After a long time, Wang Ming opened his eyes and couldn't help sighing. Sure enough, it still doesn't work. Ajwa. What are you doing, second brother? Within the area of this barrier, there are more than 400 forks in all the roads, and there are 500 to 600 buildings that Xiao Yunqing could be hiding in. I just used my brain to make deductions, and at the same time, I created 50 clones to search the streets, but I couldn't find any traces of Xiao Yunqing's death. Ajwa was stunned. This is the brain deduction technique. Wang Ming smiled. Rumor has it that a normal human's brain development rate is only 10%. Curiosity gradually appeared in Ajwa's eyes. Just as he was about to ask if the brain really had the potential to develop, Wang Ming's next words instantly threw a bucket of cold water over him. Actually, this is a lie. Therefore, if you can't do well in exams, dictation, or memorization, then your brain really isn't that good. Sometimes, when people were stupid, they had to recognize reality. In this case, hard work would lead to true knowledge. Drinking 8 walnuts couldn't increase one's intelligence, and eating a diamond partner couldn't develop one's brain. The theory behind this is just like how people on TV say that drinking Wang Laoji can increase their lifespan by 10%. It's all a lie. Ajwa suddenly felt like his heart was being stabbed. Why did you tell me the truth? The intelligence of the human brain is fixed at birth. I learned to speak when I was about 2 months old. I was able to read the Xinhua dictionary when I was 3 months old. I also memorized the Tsihai dictionary. After that, I also memorized the 3-character classic, the Tao Te Ching, the Diamond Sutra, the Great Compassion Mantra, the 300 poems of the Tang Dynasty, and the entire 100,000 Whys. If it wasn't for the fact that I couldn't hold a pen at that time, I would have memorized all of these things upside down. Ajua looked at Wang Ming in a daze. But my childhood wasn't a happy one. Wang Ming sighed. Do you know how it felt when I was 5 months old? And it just so happened to be the new year, when those aunties in the countryside went door to perform. Ajua was silent. In fact, everyone probably had similar experiences when they were young. Especially when they were kids, their parents would force them to perform in front of relatives and friends during the New Year and other festivals. Not only would they recite poems and sing, they might even have to perform acrobatics. The worst-case scenario was that if they didn't perform, they wouldn't get a red packet. During the New Year, what the elders liked to do the most was compare their children's grades, abilities, and personalities. As long as their children's skills were better, they would feel proud. The one who suffered the most was probably Ling Ling. Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming covered his face with his hand and smiled bitterly. When he was 1.5 years old, his father dragged him to perform breaking a boulder on his chest in front of relatives and friends. Holy shit! Ajua couldn't have been more shocked by these words. Wang Ming. Also, to save money, some of the elders kept taking Ling Ling to the snack shop next door to buy crispy noodle snacks. Until he was 4, he received crispy noodle snacks as New Year's money every year. Ajua finally knew why his Shifu was so passionate about crispy noodle snacks. It turned out that it had started when he was a kid. As he said this, the ring on Wang Ming's hand flashed with spirit light, and he actually took out a pure black helmet that looked rather technologically advanced. Ajua, what's this? This is my invention, a helmet that can expand my brain waves. As long as I wear it, my brain waves can be amplified by more than 50 times, and I can use the brain deduction technique to create 600 clones in my head at the same time. Wang Ming explained lightly. As long as I use this helmet now, I believe I'll be able to pinpoint the child's location very quickly. Ajua was inwardly alarmed. The brain deduction technique was a new type of spell developed in the spirit energy information era, and even ordinary people could use it. It didn't need to consume any spirit energy, and the only difficulty in using it was controlling the brain clones that were created when the spell was cast, which had the effect of predicting the future. Under normal circumstances, it was already the limit for a normal cultivator to split into 5 clones in their head. Moreover, the results of these 5 clones calculations might not all be accurate. Before he had put on the helmet, Wang Ming had been able to release 50 brain clones effortlessly. Now that his brain waves had been amplified, the number of clones could actually reach 600 at the same time. No ordinary person would be able to withstand such an enormous brain computing capacity. In some sense, Ajua felt that Wang Ming was also a pretty scary guy. Wang Ming was about to put on the helmet when he suddenly saw Ajua's expression freeze next to him. It wasn't long before a feminine voice came from behind him, which was particularly unpleasant. Chapter 348. Turning his head, Wang Ming saw a man in a gray robe with a startling face. It was impossible to tell his age from his face, because it was already completely disfigured. Wang Ming analyzed the wound on the man's face, and concluded that it was probably a burn caused by a high-density spirit power mass. Furthermore, it was very likely that some kind of curse had been applied to the spirit power mass to make the wound unable to heal forever. It was useless to use any methods to retain one's youthful looks, even plastic surgery. Brother Air, be careful. Ajua stared warily at the newcomer, and secretly cursed that things weren't looking good. He should have thought of this earlier. Since Shuego's sex goal was to ultimately allow Xiao Yunqing to successfully detonate the bomb, it was impossible that they hadn't sent someone to keep an eye on him. Whether it's Xiao Yunqing or those students who you've already sent to the hospital to be quarantined, and think they're safe for the time being, they can't escape death. The ugly man smiled sinisterly. Because his face had been destroyed, it was impossible to make out his expression as he spoke. He held a long sword in his hand, the edge of which was a little unusual as it was sawtoothed. The man tapped the long sword against his shoulder with an indifferent expression and a hoarse voice. My lord has been planning this revenge operation for a long time. It can't go wrong. Wang Ming sat cross-legged on the ground, without the slightest hint of fear on his face. He simply put the black tech helmet on the ground and looked at the man as he asked, "This is just a grudge between two epic-level killers. These children are innocent. You shouldn't have dragged innocent people into this." The man sneered. From the beginning, this was just pure revenge. When Gorgeous Itinerant killed my lord's godson back then, he didn't hesitate at all, and his methods were extremely cruel. Gorgeous Itinerant thinks that my lord can't do anything to him, just because he's retired from the world. That's really ridiculous. Of course, it's not like there's no way for this matter to end peacefully. Speaking up to this point, the man narrowed his eyes. My lord still cherishes our former friendship as fellow disciples. As long as Gorgeous Itinerant is willing to kowtow in front of my lord's godson, Black Gauz's grave, admit his mistake, and then hand over his peerless killing weapon, my lord can release the power of the fruit in these students with a wave of his hand. Before this, Wang Ming and Ajua had heard from Wang Ling about the feud between these two epic-level killers. And every time the grudge between these two epic assassins was mentioned, two things would always be mentioned. The first was Taoist Taoya's godson Black Gauze. The other was Gorgeous Itinerant's hidden peerless killing weapon. Ajua, I have a question. Where did you hear about Gorgeous Itinerant hiding a killer weapon? The man was startled. Isn't that what they say? Wang Ming and Ajua were stupefied. It turned out that this was just a ***king rumor. Ajua, have you personally seen Peerless Itinerant use this killer weapon? How? How can Peerless Wandering Itinerant's killing weapon be? It was said that those who saw this great killing weapon were already dead, and their blood flowed all over the ground, unable to stop even if they wanted to. Ling and Long, and I Ming the Wang I can. This enough. Toadjud. I this operation this I said this enough. I that this I said I my. Ming Ming. Ming Ming, I of. I of I zuf. The corner of the man's mouth twitched. You, a golden core cultivator, are the supreme commander of this operation? He's very impressive. Wang Ming couldn't help laughing. Do you know Ajua? Hearing this name, the man finally turned pale with fright. You're Ajua? There was no way he didn't know this name, because it was too familiar. In just one short month, he had participated in the operation to capture the old devil, and it was even said that as the commander-in-chief of the operation, he had destroyed Immortal Mansion, the largest dark force in Huaxiao Nation's history, and captured its master alive. That was an itinerant immortal expert. The man took a deep breath, and the serrated longsword in his hand glowed, a ray of sword light reflecting on his face. Then it looks like I'll have to get rid of you both. He was at the nascent soul stage. In his opinion, an ordinary person and a golden core cultivator were no match for him at all. It was impossible to cross the gap between realms. However, before the man made his move, he noticed a very serious problem. As an ordinary person and a golden core stage cultivator, the two of them didn't seem to feel any pressure when facing him. Weren't they a little too calm? Considering that the old devil and the master of Immortal Mansion had both fallen at Ajua's hands, the man instantly felt that there was an 80% chance that this was a trap. Maybe these two people were carrying some kind of defensive magic treasure with a backlash attribute. When two people's realms weren't on the same level, the expert usually lost because he or she had underestimated the enemy and thought that they could kill the enemy in one blow. But sometimes, it was precisely this kind of belittling attitude that often led to the opponent falling into their trap. In a situation where they couldn't confirm whether or not the other party was carrying a defensive magic treasure with a backlash attribute, directly attacking the head was the best option. Raising his sword, he turned into a blur on the ground and was so fast that Audua couldn't react at all. Killing intent burst forth. There was no embellishment to this sword, but it was already whistling through the air. The man raised the serrated longsword in his hand and moved gracefully under his gray trench coat as he prepared to cut off Audua's head. Audua's expression finally changed as he sensed the man's killing intent. His first reaction was to pull the long underwear over his head, as Wang Ming had told him before. But it was already too late. Just as Audua was about to move, the man's sword had already cut down on his head. Got it, the man sneered in his heart, but the next moment, his expression abruptly changed. Because after the sawtooth longsword cut through Audua's head, there wasn't a drop of blood on it. Audua, who should have been decapitated by the longsword, seemed to have turned into a wisp of sand and directly disappeared into thin air. What the hell? Was this an illusion spell? Doubts surfaced in the man's mind subconsciously. But even if it was an illusion spell, the man didn't dare believe that a golden core cultivator could trick him. Then in the next second, the scene in front of him changed unharmed. Audua reappeared in front of him. On the other side, Wang Ming sat cross-legged on the ground, without the slightest hint of fear on his face. He put down the black tech helmet in his hand and looked at the man. This is just a grudge between two epic-level killers. These children are innocent. You shouldn't have dragged innocent people into this. The man. Wait a minute. He seemed to have heard this line somewhere before. Furthermore, when he had said this line, this young man in a white coat had indeed put his helmet on the ground. The man remembered this scene very clearly. There was no mistaking it. But what on earth was going on? Damn it. Feeling that something wasn't right, the man raised his sword again and slashed at Wang Ming this time. Wang Ming's situation was the same as Audua's. There was no blood at all. After being slashed, it only turned into a wisp of sand and quickly dissipated. The man rubbed his eyes. The next moment, he saw Wang Ming reappear and sit cross-legged in front of him. Wang Ming put down the helmet in his hand and looked at the man. This is just a grudge between two epic-level killers. These children are innocent. You shouldn't have dragged innocent people into this. The man's lips instantly twitched. Had he King entered Inception? Chapter 349. On the rooftop, Audua stood on one side with a question mark on his face as he looked at the middle-aged man who was continuously brandishing the sawtooth longsword in the air. Brother, what's going on? Wang Ming smiled. The true essence of the brain deduction technique isn't just about deducing things in your head. The most powerful profound meaning was the ability to allow others to enter the space within your mind. It's a little complicated to explain, but I've already trapped him. He thinks he's chopping someone, but in fact, it's just my brain clone that's been chopped to death. Hearing this, Audua was secretly astonished. He had never thought that someone would actually be able to cultivate this technique to this level, which also proved how terrifying Wang Ming's brain was. Now, Audua finally knew why this brother could wear this white coat at such a young age. What do we do now? Audua asked as he stared at the middle-aged man, who was chopping at the air, as if he had gone mad. The man was at the nascent soul stage. Although he was currently trapped in Wang Ming's brain deduction technique, Audua couldn't do anything to him. Even if he sneakily stabbed him in the back with a sword, the damage that a golden core cultivator could do to a nascent soul cultivator was very limited. Thus, using the brain deduction technique to stall for time wasn't a long-term solution. Wang Ming was naturally well aware of this in his heart. Furthermore, when he wasn't wearing a helmet, he only had 50 brain clones. Once the man chopped them all down, this restriction would be lifted. And for a very long time to come, the brain deduction technique would be on cooldown. The biggest limitation of the brain deduction technique was that it couldn't be used on the same person in a short period of time. But Wang Ming had already thought of a way. The ring on his hand flashed with spirit light. And he actually took out a brand new set of red long johns and a very ordinary hemp rope. Audiobook was utterly astonished. He already knew what Wang Ming was going to do. In this situation where he couldn't cause any damage, the surefire way to tie up the enemy was to tie him up for a long time. As long as he used this set of long johns as a sack to wrap this person from head to toe, and then used an ordinary hemp rope to tie him up on the outside of the long johns, it would be like a prison. Even better than the spirit shackles. Brother Air, this is too dangerous. Let me do it. Don't mind me. Hiding a few meters behind the man, Wang Ming said, "It wasn't easy for me to get rid of that she-devil outside, so give me a chance to prove myself. And let me tell you, I have a lot of experience doing this kind of thing." Audiobook. Have you watched Man vs. Wild? Wang Ming asked. Audiobook. Ah. Wang Ming. It's that show where you turn around and everything is protein. For the first time, Audiobook felt like he was a little out of touch with the times. No, in some sense, he was actually older than Wang Ming. This made Zhuyu want to cry but have no tears. Sure enough, there was a generation gap every 2 years. Nowadays, the news said that young people in their 20s were already experiencing a midlife crisis. It was not without reason. It's okay if you haven't seen it before. Let me show you. Wang Ming grinned and made a gesture at Audiobook. He had already unbuttoned the collar of the long johns and sneaked around to the man's back, planning to find an opportunity to put it on. Look, there's a lone nascent soul cultivator here. We have Ling Junren's special long johns and an ordinary thick hemp rope, and we can try to catch him. Wang Ming cautiously stood a few meters behind the man. A nascent soul cultivator can provide us with a lot of protein. Audiobook. But a nascent soul cultivator isn't easy to deal with. We have to approach him slowly from behind and strike while he's down. Although he's currently trapped in my brain deduction technique, we still need to be careful. Audiobook was speechless, because in the next moment, Wang Ming had taken advantage of the man's breaths to actually pounce on him and accurately put the long johns on him. Using long johns to put someone on. And it really ***king worked. What are you spacing out for? Come and help, Wang Ming shouted. After a moment of stupefaction, Audiobook hurried over to help, and together with Wang Ming, he directly tied the man up. It wasn't until that moment that the man came back to his senses from Wang Ming's brain deduction technique. What's going on? The man was astonished to find that he had actually been put on long johns. Even his legs had been forcibly put on long johns, and his entire body was tightly bound by the hemp rope. He struggled with all his might, blue veins popping out on his neck and spirit light bursting out from all over his body. However, a golden light emerged from the long johns at the same time, and his struggles were like punching cotton or a clay ox in the sea. It was to no avail. How is this possible? The man blurted out. A magic treasure carried by an ordinary person could actually trap him. More importantly, this was just a set of long johns that couldn't be more ordinary, and could be found everywhere on the market. What kind of magic weapon is this? The man was utterly astonished and had an incredulous expression on his face. Combined with his already disfigured face, it made the whole scene look especially frightening. Wang Ming half-crouched in front of the man and patted him on the shoulder. Stop struggling. These long johns may look a little crude, but even an itinerant immortal might not be able to escape. The man from Shuego sect smiled miserably, and there was suddenly some despair on his face. When he had heard Audiobook's name earlier, the man had actually already been on guard. But in the end, he had still fallen for it. This ordinary person who didn't have a trace of spirit energy on him wasn't ordinary at all. Thinking of how he had been trapped by the brain deduction technique, the man raised his terrifying face and glared at Wang Ming. You noticed me from the beginning? To be precise, it should have been at the beginning of the barrier. My 50 brain clones were already on the move. Actually, I knew Xiao Yunqing's position from the beginning, and I also knew of your existence. Wang Ming crossed his arms and shrugged as he said indifferently, I just put on this show to lure you out. Wang Ming's tone was a little playful as he said this, and there was even that trademark naughty smile on his face, which was the complete opposite of Wang Ling's poker face from beginning to end. However, the deterrent effect was still very strong. If it was said that Wang Ling's intimidating power was the suppression of his aura from beginning to end, then Wang Ming's intimidating power was the fear of being toyed with in the palm of his hand. The man was secretly alarmed. He hadn't expected Wang Ming to have actually planned this far. This time, the man finally looked Wang Ming in the eye and started to size up the white coat Wang Ming was wearing. In the end, his gaze fell on the metal on it. Then he suddenly thought of something, and his eyes widened. But before he could say anything, Wang Ming had already pointed the heavenly materials sword at the man's throat. Speak your Shuego sect's real objective. According to the information I have, your Shuego sect's actions aren't as simple as just revenge, right? The man narrowed his eyes at Wang Ming. What are you looking at? Hurry up and speak. Wang Ming frowned and complained. I'm just an ordinary person. Carrying this sword is like carrying a dumbbell. It's very tiring. The man. Ajwa. Chapter 350. In that moment, the man deeply felt like he had been deceived. The young man in the white coat standing in front of him was clearly just an ordinary person. But the man felt that this was a lot more troublesome than many cultivators of the same realm. It was actually quite hard to put into words this strong sense of disparity after being defeated. It was like meeting an online friend. She was clearly a pure and cute girl online, but in the end, she turned out to be a fat tiger in real life. With Wang Ming's sword at his throat, the man once again tried to struggle free of the long johns and hemp rope, but failed. The hemp rope was just an ordinary rope, but the long johns inside weren't ordinary, as they completely blocked off his spirit energy like a membrane. Don't struggle. These long johns are specially made to catch people. They're the same style as what we're wearing, but they're different. Wang Ming smiled. Tell me your real purpose. The man lowered his head and gritted his teeth, but didn't answer. Wang Ming smirked and poured the spirit energy stored in the ring into the heavenly materials sword, then gently cut open a small wound on the man's neck. On the side, Ajwa couldn't help but marvel at the material of the heavenly materials sword. The sword which the master of Immortal Mansion had forged was really too monstrous. Although it didn't have a sword spirit, the sword chi lingering around it was really frightening. After pouring spirit energy into it, even an ordinary person could easily cut open a nascent soul cultivator's body. Wang Ming's move was a small show of force. At first, the man didn't think much of it, but his expression quickly turned uneasy, because he sensed evil sword chi pouring into his body and eroding his spirit energy bit by bit. This sword actually had the effect of sealing a spirit. Wang Ming kept that smirk on his face as he said again, Do you understand now? As long as I have this sword, I can effortlessly destroy all your plans. This sword has the effect of swallowing spirit energy. This small wound is just a warning. If I slash you once, you'll probably be bedridden for several years. Wang Ming's words were actually half true. Back when Feng Xing had been stabbed in the middle of a fierce battle, the effect of sealing his spirit had actually only lasted for 3 to 5 days. When the sword chi had swallowed up all the spirit energy in his body, the sword chi generated by the heavenly materials sword would naturally circulate in his body and then gradually disappear. Of course, Ajwa also knew about this, so when he heard Wang Ming's words, Ajwa couldn't help sighing in his heart. With this kind of acting skills, it would really be a pity if he didn't go on the show Eggs of Actors. The man's disfigured face became even uglier. It seems like my guess is correct. You guys really do have secrets. Wang Ming stared fixedly at the man. I'll ask you one last time. Tell me everything you know. After about 2 or 3 minutes of silence, the man lowered his head and sighed. I am Cho Shirsi of Shuego sect. Wang Ming. Tisich, who asked for your name. I just want to know what happened. Cho Shirsi chuckled. Of course, I have my reasons for telling you my name. In our Shuego sect, there's no distinction between realms. The uglier you are, the higher your status is. My name is Cho Shirsi, which makes me the 14th ugliest person in the sect. Wang Ming and Ajua were stunned when they heard this. Cho Shirsi's disfigured face was already completely unrecognizable. Even his nose and eyes were a mess, yet he was only ranked 14th. Then how ugly was the first? Cho Shirsi chuckled. So if you want to ask me about what happened, I actually don't know much. Even if you take me back and forcibly search my memories, it's no use. The real core secrets are in the hands of the higher-ups. At the very least, only the top 3 know the complete plan. Is Choi Taoist Tao Dai? Ajua asked curiously. Not really. The man shook his head. My lord's ugliness can no longer be described with words. He's truly hideous beyond compare. Even we feel disgusted when we see his true face. That's why my lord always wears a mask. Wang Ming and Ajua. Taking a deep breath, Ajua continued to ask, second question. Isn't your sect called Guogua sect? Why do you call it Shuego sect as well? At first, it was a brother with an accent who called it Shuego sect. Later, our sect felt that it was more domineering, so we simply called it that. Cho Shirsi sighed. When we went out to catch the students, we told them we were from Guogua sect. At first, they weren't afraid at all, and thought we were all fruit ninjas. We might as well call ourselves Shuego sect. Wang Ming and Ajua. Ajua sighed and slowly approached her. Then tell me everything you know. But just as Ajua was about to get close, Cho Shirsi suddenly laughed loudly. He opened his mouth, and a silver thread as thin as gossamer spat out. The silver thread abruptly expanded in the air, and actually condensed into a small spiral-shaped magic weapon, which ruthlessly crashed into the center of Ajua's forehead. This was Cho Shirsi's final trump card to protect himself. However, the attack range was very limited, so Cho Shirsi had been waiting for an opportunity, waiting for either of the two to walk within half a meter of him before using it. And within half a meter, this move was a killer move that could kill in one hit. Wang Ming had been more cautious before, but little did he know that during their conversation just now, Ajua had let his guard down. However, what stupefied Cho Shirsi was that after this spiral-shaped magic weapon hit Ajua, there was still no blood on his forehead, and it just turned into sand and scattered in the wind. The next moment, he saw Ajua reappear on the other side, and the scene from before replayed in front of him. Wang Ming reappeared and sat cross-legged in front of him. He put the helmet in his hand on the ground, then looked at Ajua. I knew you had other tricks up your sleeve. Did you think you had already escaped my brain deduction technique? Cho Shirsi grit his teeth. The next moment, Wang Ming directly stepped forward with his sword, and cut a large wound on Cho Shirsi's neck. The heavenly materials sword special sword chi entered Cho Shirsi's body, and a burning sensation penetrated through the wound and poured into his body, causing him to cry out in pain. Cho Shirsi fell to the ground in pain, his expression a little desperate. He regretted courting death earlier a little. Now that the sword chi had entered his body, the spirit sealing effect had greatly intensified, and he couldn't release even the slightest bit of spirit energy. Now even an ordinary person could do whatever they wanted to him. Ajua picked up the spiral-shaped magic weapon that hadn't hit him yet from the ground. This is one of the top 10 hidden weapons, the gyroscope needle. Ajua recognized the origin of this small magic weapon. Although it was very small, it wasn't weak at all. The shorter the distance, the more explosive its power. Caught off guard within half a meter, even a soul formation cultivator would fall prey to it. How dare you trick me? The corner of Ajua's mouth twitched, and he slapped Cho Shirsi in the face. He was very angry. If it hadn't been for Wang Ming, he really would have died just now. His death wasn't a big deal, but he would never see Shifu Wang Ling again. Wang Ming couldn't help laughing at this scene. Now that things have come to this, hitting him is useless. Holding the gyroscope needle, Ajua looked at Wang Ming. Second brother, do you know what the code word for this gyroscope needle is? Wang Ming. Ajua. You're asking for it. Wang Ming. Chapter 351. While Wang Ming and Ajua were still entangled with Cho Shirsi, Wang Ling certainly wasn't idle. Getting Wang Ming to use the heavenly materials sword to save these students was one thing. But mediating the fight between two epic-level killers was Wang Ling's own job. After all, he had received a gift from Killer Taoists back then, and he understood the principle of being shorthand when given. To be honest, Wang Ling actually didn't want to get involved in this matter. But who told him to be unable to control his own hands back then? After learning that Wang Ming and the others had gone to deal with Xiao Yunqing's matter, Wang Ling immediately went to Second Cultivation People's Hospital. If Wang Ling's guess was right, Taoist Taotai would definitely make a big move here tonight. This was also in line with Wang Ming's deduction in the car. Xiao Yunqing had only been used to stall for time. A mere student's spirit explosion wasn't enough at all. If the hospital fell into enemy hands, and all the students here created a spirit explosion together, more than half of Songhai City would be in trouble. Wang Ling teleported to a park near Second Hospital, and then slowly walked toward its entrance. At that moment, the entrance to Second Hospital's independent ward was already heavily guarded by SWAT officers holding up explosion-proof magic shields. And it wasn't just the entrance. Even the nearby streets and even the dark alleys had spotlights and SWAT officers patrolling nearby. Special times called for special treatment. Anyone who was even the slightest bit suspicious would attract attention. Thus, before coming here, Wang Ling had specially asked Immortal Toya to contact Director Li. Just as he reached the entrance, Director Li, who had been waiting outside the hospital for a long time, strode forward. As usual, Director Li was wearing a white coat with the relevant ID hanging around his neck. The first thing he did when he saw Wang Ling was to hand him his work ID and a white coat of the same style. Immortal Toya had asked Director Li to arrange these things for him. From appearance to identity, the one-stop service was completely packaged. Wang Ling looked at the work ID in his hand, which read, Second Cultivation People's Hospital's Independent Ward Psychiatry Department Chief, Wang Hua. The corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. Never mind that the name was fake. How had he become the psychiatry department chief? Ling Junren, please forgive me. One of my colleagues who was transferred previously happened to be in the psychiatry department. Director Li said telepathically in a very low voice. If this identity wasn't arranged like this, it would be easy to see through him. Wang Ling nodded and didn't say anything more. After that, Chief Li took out 2 masks from his pocket. After the two of them put them on, they walked into the hospital naturally. The SWAT officers at the door didn't ask too much, because Director Li and the others already knew each other. When he personally came to receive Wang Ling, the SWAT officers thought that some expert had rushed over from home to the hospital. After receiving the news of the expert consultation, almost all the doctors who returned to the hospital from their homes were personally greeted by Director Li. So the SWAT team did not find anything strange. If there was one, it was that Wang Ling really looked too young. Thus, Wang Ling felt that the masks Director Li had prepared were quite exquisite. Right now, it wasn't just doctors and nurses in Second Hospital, but also many teachers from number 60 high school. If he was recognized here, it would definitely be very troublesome. Tell Ling Junren about the current situation. As he led Wang Ling to the isolation ward, Director Li gave him a brief rundown of the current situation. All the students who have taken the fruit have been separated into separate rooms according to their schools. After a consultation with the hospital's experts, they were able to develop a preliminary reagent to suppress the production of spirit energy and reduce the concentration of spirit power in the body in a short period of time. But Ling Junren should have already heard that this reagent can only last until the morning of the day after tomorrow at the most. Speaking up to this point, Director Li couldn't help sighing. To be honest, no one knows what will happen after that. Wang Ling nodded. Although this incident looked very scary and dangerous, the truth was that as long as Taoist Taotai didn't continue to cause trouble, and Wang Ming rushed to the hospital with the heavenly material sword in hand, everything would be over. The scary thing was that Taoist Tao might come up with something else. Director Li led Wang Ling into the elevator, and he used his work ID to swipe the signal recognition area before he was able to press the button for the floor. This was specially designed to prevent patients with mental problems from escaping. Unless hospital staff swiped their cards, they wouldn't be able to get down at all. Even the fire escape had to be accessed by swiping a card. According to Second Hospital's rules for the allocation of individual wards, the more difficult the illness, the higher the floor they would be assigned. This time, Director Li directly pressed the button for the 30th floor, which was the highest floor in the entire building. All the students who had taken the fruit were sent to the 30th floor. Director Li. Currently, some of the students are a little emotionally unstable, so half an hour ago, we applied for assistance from the city police station. Before Ling Jimren arrived, the first batch of psychiatrists we could contact had already arrived. As he spoke, the elevator doors slowly opened, and Wang Ling saw a familiar figure standing in front of him. It was a tall, thin young man who had just taken a white coat from a nurse and put it on. He grinned at the nurse in front of him. "How are the children now?" The female nurse replied, "There are some who are more difficult to deal with, and we've already handed them over to the chief specialist for guidance. Dr. Song's job is to take care of the children in Ward 12 and 13. I'll have to trouble Dr. Song next." Dr. Song patted his chest confidently. "Okay, no problem, leave it to me." Wang Ling. That familiar back view, that familiar voice, and that iconic big white teeth. As expected, this person was Lai Mengmeng. It was only later that Wang Ling learned that Lai Mengmeng had been personally recommended by his university professor to come here. In university, Lai Mengmeng had studied psychology, and had even treated the old man's illness, and counseled him before. The female doctor nodded, a little infected by Lai Mengmeng's sunny nature. "Good luck, Dr. Song. But there's something I don't understand. Why doesn't Dr. Song directly work in psychology? Actually, I'm not as good as my teacher says I am. I'm just applying what I've learned in class. Nowadays, if you can't be as good as my Shifu Jiang Li, you won't be able to make enough money to live on." Lai Mengmeng smiled at the female nurse. "That's why I became a novel later on. Before entering the profession, I thought that as long as the novel had a few authors whose novels sold well, I would be able to get a share of the profits." The female nurse. "Then and then." Lai Mengmeng. "Later, I realized that I didn't even get half a cent." The female nurse. Lai Mengmeng. "But actually, I feel that the job is pretty easy. Although the pay is average, if I take on some more work like this and earn some extra money, it'll be enough." The female nurse. "For example, there's an author on our website who writes books, songs, lyrics, screenplays, comics, and videos. It looks like he's not doing proper work. But the truth is that he's teaching us a profound truth." Chapter 352. Following Director Li's lead, Wang Ling took the fire escape from the 30th floor, directly to the rooftop of the hospital. The rooftop was very spacious, and there were many fitness facilities. There was a thick iron fence around the rooftop, which was as tall as several people. This was to prevent patients from jumping off the building. The patients in the hospital usually had 1 to 2 hours to relax on the rooftop. Just a few years ago, there were a few cases of mental patients jumping off buildings during the release period. If this matter had to be traced back to the gate between worlds 6 years ago, there were actually many signs before the gate between worlds descended, such as the abnormal reactions of various animals, but these did not attract people's attention. Ever since the advent of the spirit energy information era, things like natural disasters could be detected a few days in advance using scientific instruments. However, the days before the gate between worlds descended could be said to be completely calm and tranquil. Everything looked too normal. There wasn't even a haze in the sky. Some people found their cats and dogs barking, but in the end, they just beat them up with their slippers. The day before the gate between worlds descended, A few mental patients who were on the rooftop of the second hospital suddenly revealed horrified expressions and started to laugh crazily, just like how it was written in a script. At the same time, all the patients rushed forward crazily. Finally, they rushed out of the rooftop and made a leap of faith. After the incident was over, according to the analysis of some experts, mental patients were much more sensitive to the fluctuations of the gate between worlds than normal people. And it was precisely because of this that these patients on the rooftop had such an extreme reaction. At this point, people completely believed in the old saying, "Mental patients have a wide range of thinking." It had been a long time since the descent of the gate between worlds 6 years ago. But standing on this rooftop at this moment, Wang Ling still couldn't forget the shock of watching the surveillance footage of this rooftop in the news when he was a child, and how the mental patients had jumped off like crazy. Wang Ling actually felt that this incident had left a huge psychological shadow on him. Of course, having a high realm was one thing, but having a strong spiritual foundation was another. After all, he had only been 10 years old back then. So in various ways, Wang Ling actually quite admired Father and Mother Wang for educating him spiritually. At the age of 16, many people had yet to develop their worldview and were still in the stage of confusion. Xiao Yuncheng, who ate the fruit and thought that he had obtained power, lost himself. This was the best example. He didn't think he was very mature, and sometimes did rather childish things. But he was very proud of one thing. He felt that his 3 views were more upright than many of his peers. Thus, he had always felt that it was unfair to compare him with cultivators, who had truly reached the limits of their realms one step at a time. He still had a lot to learn. Father and Mother Wang had given him a good foundation for building up his soul since he was young, and he needed to explore the rest on his own. Some people had lived most of their lives without understanding the meaning and beauty of life. Wang Ling had always felt that there was a meaning to his innate realm, which was something he had always been looking for in his daily life. What is daily life? Wang Ling felt that there was a classic line. Perhaps every day we live through is a series of miracles. Well, back to the topic at hand. Director Li naturally had his reasons for bringing Wang Ling to the rooftop. To be honest, when he had stepped into the building, Wang Ling had vaguely sensed some unusual fluctuations, and was very certain that they were coming from the hospital rooftop. Seeing Wang Ling's slightly frown and pensive expression, Director Li nodded. It seems Shifu's judgment is completely correct. When Immortal Toya had arrived at the hospital earlier, he had clearly sensed something unusual, but it hadn't been as precise as Wang Ling's. Someone had already tampered with this place. Wang Ling walked to the center of the rooftop and looked down at his feet. An invisible magic array of unknown function had been set up here, and the technique used was quite brilliant. At the very least, among all the magic arrays Wang Ling had encountered so far, this was one of the top 3. In the history of cultivation, there had been many famous array masters, such as the legendary Immortal Jin Yuan. More recently, Immortal Shi Pai's array technique was second to none. Wang Ling crouched down and touched the ground. He tried to send spirit energy deep into the ground to disintegrate this array, but failed. The spirit energy was like a clay ox disappearing into the sea, as it didn't have the slightest effect. Breaking an array was like dismantling a bomb. It was a skill. You had to start from the structure of the array itself, decode it, analyze it, and finally break it. You just had to find the core array pattern and destroy it. But the difficulty Wang Ling had now was that this array was invisible and heavily guarded. It wasn't that he couldn't break it, but that it would take some time. Very troublesome. At this point, it would be great if there was an array expert, Wang Ling thought. At the very least, it would save him a lot of trouble. Just as he was thinking this, he suddenly heard faint footsteps coming from the corridor behind him. Who was it? Wang Ling turned his head to look. Director Li was startled by Wang Ling's reaction. When he turned his head, he saw a very sunny teenager in sportswear slowly walking over. Director Li instantly broke out in a cold sweat. He had forgotten to lock the door to the rooftop just now, and hadn't expected someone to actually come at this time without him noticing at all. This person's aura was too faint, and completely out of proportion with his sunny appearance, which gave Director Lee the feeling that there was something sinister about him to the bone. "Who are you? This isn't a place you should be." Director Lee stared at the newcomer. Feng Xing emerged from the shadows and raised his hands with a wide smile on his face. "Senior Immortal Toya sent me here to take a look at the situation. One of our own." Director Lee raised an eyebrow. "I'm Feng Xing. I just joined the chat group. Director Lee may not have seen me before." Feng Xing gave his trademark smile. Wang Ling felt that the biggest characteristic of Feng Xing's smile was that it looked very sunny. Furthermore, every time he smiled, the curve of his lips was exactly the same. It was hard to tell whether it was a real smile or a fake one. "So your brother Feng Xing." Director Lee heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Feng Xing's name. Although he had never seen Feng Xing before, he had heard a few things from his Shifu, Immortal Toya. Feng Xing had contributed greatly to the arrest of the master of Immortal Mansion previously, and was very strong. Of course, that was all Director Lee knew. After the Immortal Mansion incident, everyone who had been involved in the matter had agreed to never mention Feng Xing's true identity again. Wang Ling never thought that Feng Xing would actually come here. "The one in the mask in front is classmate Wang Ling, right?" Feng Xing smiled. "This disguise is too bad. Next time, classmate Wang Ling should wear sunglasses. Otherwise I'll be able to see through your eyes." "Wang Ling." Director Lee. "Ling Jinren discovered an invisible array here, but it seems that it's a little troublesome to crack. Since brother Feng Xing is here, how about we help guard Ling Jinren together?" "An invisible array?" Feng Xing rubbed his chin. "I've done some research on arrays. How about I take a look at it? Actually, I'm an array master." Director Lee. "Brother Feng Xing, you've done some research on arrays." Feng Xing grinned. "That's right, my dad dabbled in this, so I inherited some of it." Hearing this, Wang Ling abruptly dropped his forehead into his hand as he remembered that Feng Xing was Immortal Shipai's son. If Feng Xing hadn't mentioned it, he would have almost forgotten about it. Previously, he had said that it would be best if an array master came, but he hadn't expected one to actually appear. Chapter 353. At around 10 o'clock in the evening, while Wang Ling and Feng Xing were dealing with the array, Wang Ming sent word that Xiao Yunqing was under control, and that they had arrested a middle-level Shuego sect cadre, Cho Shirsi. After a preliminary interrogation, Cho Shirsi's information was indeed quite limited. But even so, Wang Ling had at least learned something important. Shuego sect's ranking was based on appearance. Wang Ming took a photo of Cho Shirsi and sent it to Wang Ling. In order to make Wang Ling feel less nauseous, Wang Ming had even taken it with a beauty camera. But even with the camera's beauty settings on full display, it still couldn't stop the horrifying feeling this face gave off. Although the middle-aged man who had abducted a young girl in the park was also very ugly, at least his facial features were normal. This Cho Shirsi's facial features were a mess. At the same time, this proved a second thing. The middle-aged man who had been arrested in the park was really just a small fry in Shuego sect. As Feng Xing examined the structure of the invisible array, he glanced out of the corner of his eye at the photo Wang Ming had sent him, and the expression on his face couldn't help twitching uncontrollably. Director Lee leaned over to take a look, and was also directly stupefied. Ha ha ha. This person's appearance was really unique. Did Picasso paint his face? Feng Xing. Wang Ling. So the question now was, if Cho Shirsi was already this ugly, then how ugly were the top few contestants in Shuego sect? After learning that Cho Shirsi had revealed Shuego sect's ranking system, this question popped up in almost everyone's mind. As Wang Ling had said, analyzing an array was a technical job. Although it wasn't as if Wang Ling couldn't crack the invisible array under his feet, He actually wasn't proficient in deciphering it. If he had to use the heavenly eye to crack it, that would be like using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. When things didn't work out, he would break it down by force. This had been Wang Ling's character since he was a child, and could be seen from when he had broken a big magic sword with his bare hands. As expected, this array is a little troublesome, but it can be completely broken. Fang Xing squatted down and stared at the ground for a good 2 or 3 minutes. Then he nodded, directly bit his finger, and used his blood as a medium to carve the revealing magic seal on the ground. Wang Ling narrowed his eyes slightly as he looked carefully on the side. Immortal Shi Pai had been a famous array master back then, and was no longer just an expert. He was at the very least an extraordinary great master. Among the many things Fang Xing had inherited, Wang Ling thought that Immortal Shi Pai's notes as an array master should be among them. Those were genuine treasures, and were what all the array masters of today would scramble to get their hands on. If one were to use a phrase to describe it, then that notebook was equivalent to the formation circle. 10,000 peaks. It was very obvious that Fang Xing had inherited Immortal Shi Pai's legacy. After all, he was her biological son. Get ready. After carving the revealing magic seal, Fang Xing pushed off the ground with both hands and gave a light shout. Spirit energy poured endlessly from his palms into the ground. In the blink of an eye, the invisible magic array on the ground took on its original form. It was a high-density array set up with crisscrossing runes, and had a radius of 6 meters. After it took shape, an illusory shadow in the center of the array pounced at Wang Ling like a vicious beast. This was the array spirit of this magic array. Wang Ling reacted very quickly. He stretched out his hand, and the shadow plunged headfirst into his palm, unable to take another step forward. Then he squeezed it lightly, and with a bang, the shadow instantly exploded. Director Li on the side was secretly horrified at this scene. This wasn't a weak magic array. Although it couldn't compare to a holy array, it was still one of the best. But this array spirit actually couldn't survive for more than half a second under Wang Ling's attack. Ling Zhenren was really terrifyingly strong. With the array spirit destroyed, the magic array was no longer useful. However, there was still one thing that was unclear, and that was what on earth this magic array was used for. Wang Ling stared at the magic array under his feet, which had completely taken shape, and at the runes that remained on it, deep in thought. If I'm right, this magic array should have a resonance attribute. Fang Xing crouched down and ran his hand over the runes. Resonance arrays usually don't appear on their own. They might be on the roofs of tall buildings near Second Academy. Then what on earth is the purpose of setting up these arrays? Director Li asked curiously. I just checked them carefully, and they should be storage arrays, which can be used to store spirit power on a large scale. Fang Xing narrowed his eyes, and the smile on his face gradually faded as he suddenly became a little serious. He sighed. If I'm right, I'm afraid this is the real reason why Shuego sect made the students take the spirit fruit this time. If we collect all the spirit power produced by the spirit explosion, it will be very impressive. Director Li's expression changed. What do they need so much spirit power for? Fang Xing stood up, his serious expression relaxing. We won't know until we investigate this matter. But what we can be sure of is that Shuego sect's motives aren't pure. Wang Ling also stood up and gazed calmly at Fang Xing. He already had an answer in his heart, but he didn't say it out loud. He still needed to catch someone to verify it. Director Li frowned, feeling like he had just learned something incredible. Then what should we do now? Now, we can only rely on Ling Zhenren to keep the students safe. Fang Xing looked up at Wang Ling with a smile on his face. I'm going to patrol the nearby tall buildings and see if there are any other arrays that can be destroyed. Director Li. Brother Fang Xing, you're going alone? Is that okay? Of course. Fang Xing smiled slightly. In the next moment, Director Li saw Fang Xing's feet shake, and 10 scales actually appeared on his body at the same time. And the moment the boy swallowed the scale, Director Li saw the boy's skeleton shrinking, her hair growing at a visible speed until it reached her waist. Her body was covered in a set of black armor, evenly distributed over her voluptuous body. What the hell? What was going on? Director Li was stupefied at this scene. Then I'm off. The corners of Fang Xing's mouth curled up slightly, which was completely different from the smile she had when she was in her youth form. In this form, her face had a more demonic charm. She took a step forward, and her entire body seemed to turn into the wind as she directly disappeared. So fast that Director Li couldn't keep up. Director Li didn't come back to his senses for a very, very long time. He turned his head with a stupefied expression and stared at Wang Ling, Senior Ling. From now on, should we call her brother Fang Xing or sister Fang Xing? Chapter 354. At the same time, on the other side, Lai Mingming's psychological counseling was being carried out in an orderly manner. Secretary Da Kong of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools had personally instructed him to conduct psychological counseling for the students. The severity of the Shuego sect incident wasn't just that the students who had eaten the fruit would eventually experience a spirit explosion. It could also cause severe psychological trauma to the students. Therefore, it was necessary to do psychological counseling. It wasn't just to tell the students that there were no shortcuts to true cultivation. More importantly, it was to give these students who had eaten the fruit a warning through psychological counseling. It was to make them reflect on their mistakes from the bottom of their hearts. 6 students were placed in Ward 12 and 13 respectively. When Lai Mingming entered the room, he was holding a register in his hand. Student Hirogua, Student Super Chunan, Student Su Xiao, get ready. The psychological counseling is about to begin, and everyone has to do it. Please cooperate. After he said this, there was no response from the room for a long time. It could be said that it wasn't the least bit intimidating. Lai Mingming did his best to maintain a smile, but the corners of his mouth twitched. His gaze left the roster, and as soon as he looked up, he saw Dopey Gua and Super Chun, each holding a game console and playing. They were probably playing some online game, and their faces were flushed with joy. On the other side, Little Peanut was sitting on the edge of one of the beds and watching. Hands on his hips, Lai Mingming pointed at one of them and pretended to be angry. Can you be a little more serious? Put away the game console. I just ate a fruit. The teachers are making too much of a fuss. Dopey-Gua put away the game console disinterestedly. When he looked up, his eyes met Lai Mingming's, and a surprised expression instantly appeared on his face. Dr. Song? Why is it you? At that moment, Lai Mingming finally saw Dopey-Gua's face clearly. His eyes involuntarily welled up with sparkling tears. F***K. How could it be him? Note: for the ill-fated relationship between Lai Mingming and Dopey-Gua, please refer to Chapter 132, Physical Examination Before Highly Polluted Military Training. Lai Mingming still couldn't forget the scene of Dopey-Gua personally teaching him how to test his anus during number 60 high school's military training last time. Back then, he would even dream that his anus had been blown up when he slept, and the psychological trauma had been too great. Haha, I didn't expect to meet Dr. Song here today. Dopey-Gua scratched his head and smiled like a fool. You're going to give us psychological counseling? Lai Mingming sighed. His expression suddenly became somewhat resentful. Yes, Dopey-Gua. So you're a temp again? Do you need money again? Lai Mingming immediately felt like he had been shot in the knee. F***ck me. Don't expose the truth. He put his hands on his waist and tried his best to straighten his back. I'm a regular, okay? Although it had indeed been many years since he had graduated from university, a great teacher still produced a great disciple. Lai Mingming felt that even if another 10 or so years passed, he would never forget the psychology knowledge he had mastered in university. Most importantly, he hadn't neglected his psychology course in the past few years and had a formal psychologist certificate. Otherwise, the municipal bureau wouldn't have assigned him this job. Especially in recent years, The country had become crazy about all kinds of proof. In the most extreme cases, people even wanted to prove that their mother was their mother. Lai Mingming smiled. Why? Do you want to see my certificate? Enough, enough. It's not like a few years ago. A few years ago, it would indeed have been very chaotic. In kindergartens, for example, some people don't even have a kindergarten teacher's certificate, yet they become teachers. They specialize in harming the flowers of the motherland. Dopiguo waved his hand and said with a sigh. Lai Mingming smiled bitterly. I couldn't tell, but you little fatty, are such an understanding person. My uncle told me. Dopiguo sighed and pointed to his face bitterly. I now seriously suspect that my face was harmed by those unscrupulous teachers when I was young. Lai Mingming. Superchen shook his head and patted Dopiguo on the shoulder. Don't be discouraged, old Gua. Actually, you're not that ugly. And you're quite good-looking. Little Peanut also nodded. In any case, it's not like I can't get a wife in the future. So what if I'm good-looking? Don't you still have your parrot, Dopey? Why haven't I seen you with it recently? Dopiguo dropped his forehead. That fruit. Dopey also ate it. It's now being examined at the veterinary department. Superchen. Little Peanut. Lai Mingming. Roughly 5 minutes later, Lai Mingming's psychological counseling officially began. He called the three of them together and began the first step of the whole process. His fingers twirling the fountain pen swiftly, he looked down at the diagnosis and treatment book in his hand, then turned to the three of them and asked, Why did you eat the fruit? This was actually a very important question. On the way to the hospital, the teachers in charge of each class had also asked the students similar questions. In the end, they discovered that some of the students really hadn't eaten the fruit because they wanted to become stronger or because they wanted to take a cultivation shortcut. Instead, they had eaten it by mistake without knowing it at all. Thus, before the formal psychological counseling, Lai Mingming felt that it was necessary to clarify the situation first. After all, psychological counseling was specially designed for students who had deliberately eaten the fruit for the sake of strength. Lai Mingming pointed to Superchen. You first. Superchen nodded. I have a friend. When I came home from school that day, I texted him how I could quickly become stronger in a short time. He said that it would be very difficult in a short time, unless I cheated. As long as I ate the fruit, I could obtain a steady stream of strength. Then he showed me how to eat the fruit. Later, I realized that this wasn't what I needed. If I wanted to become stronger, I absolutely couldn't eat this kind of fruit of unknown origin. The corners of Lai Mingming's mouth twitched. And then, Superchen sighed. But my mom didn't know. She thought it was a relative who sent it. So she directly cut it into a plate and put it on my desk. When I ate it, I thought it was just an ordinary fruit. Lai Mingming. Taking a deep breath, Lai Mingming looked at Dopiguo. What about you? Dopiguo. My situation is pretty much the same. Every day after school, I cut fruit for Dopey to eat. I eat the skin and he eats the meat, and then we both fell for it together. So you all ate it by mistake? Startled, Lai Mingming turned to look at Little Peanut. Why did you eat the fruit? Little Peanut smiled awkwardly and scratched his head. Because I was hungry. Lai Mingming. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.